Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. Welcome, 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 Big Jerry and Hermeteorologist, to the SandBox. Nice to see you. Oh, no, there's a few more people, so welcome to you too. This is a Monday night live stream. I hope you're having a good evening, afternoon. I have like totally already messed myself up because that's not how I normally start a live stream, but here we are. Here we are. Anyway, yes. There was so much news on this particular subject to cover that I already had a ton of news to cover in my regular news live stream that I figured I'd make a live stream devoted to this topic of wildfires because it's a global issue. So please, as always, could my unofficial producers give me a thumbs up that audio and visual is okay? I've been mucking around with some stuff. So also, hello, the Wild West. Welcome to the SandBox. Super appreciate you. Oh, and there's Philip Blair. Welcome. Yes, there's a little kitty box there. You see, at one point I was thinking, since I'm a cat person, obviously I have a little cat thing here. I'm wearing cat earrings. I have the cat drawing. I was thinking that I can make my logo have something to do with like a cat in a box, but then it's like, that's too close to like Schrodinger's, whatever, cat, you know, Schrodinger's cat, you know what I'm talking about. And so I didn't really want to have that kind of vibe going on, so I decided against it. But yeah, so today we will be talking about wildfires. It's really bad out there. The world is burning. It is burning. You know, it's one of those movie myths that I think has been totally disillusioned from many of us, where it's like there's a sci-fi movie and it's like there's an external threat like a asteroid or alien invasion, and the world comes together to save the day. Oh, that's so not the case. That is so not the case. Nope. The asteroid would hit. The aliens would have, you know, almost no. In fact, a lot of the nations would probably assist the aliens in their own different ways. It's, yeah, we're screwed as a planet. It's just like, yeah, no, this world ain't coming together if, well, let's put it this way. The capitalistic class, the Epstein class, the world leaders that are, you know, so focused on capitalism above all else, they're the ones that won't do shit about it. And yet they're the ones that are in power in a lot of the most powerful nations. Because let's just say we went the route of China. The world would be in a much better situation right now. Again, I always feel like I need to do this caveat. It's not like China's a perfect nation. There is no such thing, though. There's no such thing as a perfect nation. But what I do know is that China is actively doing something about climate change. They're switching to solar. They have more green energy, renewable energy. Housing is in a much better situation for people. They're doing something. They'll actually hold corporation CEOs accountable for fucking shit up. Here in the Western nations, they get a minister position, you know. They get invited to be part of the government. So yeah, a lot of people it's like, oh, but they crack down on things. Like, think back to COVID when they forced their citizens and stuff like that to get quarantined in shots and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, you might not like the tactics, but it feels like the culture has just turned into a bunch of fucking toddlers. Where it's all me, 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 me. I don't wanna. And they have no concept or ability to think outside of themselves in the bigger picture. Whereas, like, sometimes you might not like having to do something, but it's for the bigger good, you know? Oh, that's kind of what we're in, you know? Philip Blair, you don't want to know what folks believe we're doing with space aliens. And Cuba is rather perfect, in my opinion. Well, that's why they're being blockaded. If the Western nations can prevent an example, a successful example of a non-capitalistic state, they'll do whatever they can to make sure it doesn't happen. It's kind of like, you know, on a much smaller scale, whenever there's been studies about basic income or a universal guaranteed living or something like that. They'll study in a city, or they'll have, like here in Ontario, there was 4,000 participants and stuff like that. The government will then suddenly, like, you know, turn around and be like, oh no, we're canceling this study for reasons, because it turns out that people become more productive, they're happier, there's less abuse, they're not feeling forced to work into really horrendous conditions, and it works. Like, that's the thing. It works for the people. It doesn't work for the capitalism, though. That's the thing. That is the big thing. But right now, I know I'm competing with The Serfs Are Still Live, and I believe Secular Talk is premiering a video right now, and we do have a lot of crossover audience. I get that. So you get to hear me ramble a little bit while I'm hoping to get at least double digits into the sandbox or watching, so that I don't feel like I have to repeat myself later on when somebody asks, like, what are we talking about? Even though it's kind of in the title. I think I have a kick-ass title. You know, WWF? WWWF? Worldwide. Well, it's like the WWW, like World Wide Web, but it's worldwide. Wildfires. Huh? Could even make a thumbnail about that. Would probably help, but, you know, I'll work on it. I've been overworked. Cataloging links from my live streams about Doug Ford and Mark Carney and all their corruption and controversies and stuff. That's taken a beat. Also working on the TYT essay. I was just going over the script. And then today I was looking at my phone and all of a sudden I remembered, oh right, I need to go out somewhere. I was planning on doing it. Like, oh, I gotta rush out. Turns out that was a good thing, because I had accidentally forgot that the sunroof on my car was open, and we're supposed to be getting like massive storms tonight. So it's like, whew, that's a lifesaver that I remembered that I had to go out. But then when I got to my destination, I got oh, fuck. It's going to my car garage because my left indicator isn't working. And before, the bulb had to be replaced. It's the switch. The switch is broken. That's a light bulb I can handle. A switch, they have to take apart like the steering wheel, and oh my god. So it still works if I wiggle it around. Plus, I'm pretty sure it's legal if I just, you know, shove my arm out the window, the left hand turn signal type thing. So I might have to just deal with that for a while, because that simple little thing is like a couple $100, and I'm like, I can't. I have a table that I need to get paid off first. Oh, yeah. Fellow Blair, even the notorious Milton Friedman argued for UBI, which he called negative income tax. The Wild West World Wrestling Federation. Yeah, they had to fight over that trademark, WWF. And so the wrestling had to turn to E for entertainment because the World Wildlife Fund had already used that logo type thing from before, so they went out on it. But yeah, Philip Blair saying he started arguing for this in the early 1960s, even contributed to documentaries about in the 1980s. Yeah, there was a big experiment about that, I believe, in the 60s in Manitoba. Was it the 60s? An entire town went on to basic income. And again, that's where they learned, like, abuse went down because people weren't so stressed out. Crime went down, people's quality of life improved, people got better jobs, better educated, they were able to get to different jobs that maybe they weren't able to before, and all that sort of stuff. It's just overall beneficial. I wouldn't be stressed the fuck out right now if I had a basic income, because no, I mean, rely on disability is not it, because that keeps you in dire poverty. It doesn't keep us up to the poverty line, it keeps us well below it. So yeah. Anyway, I'm a rambling. Let's see how we're doing. Oh, we're getting there. I don't want to ramble too long because I do want to kind of get through this. There's a lot to go over. So yeah, working on the TYT essay. If I get, again, $1 bazillion and a big and I have enough energy at the end of this, I will give a sneak peek. Depending on the bazillions donated, will be a determining factor in how long the sneak peek is. I'm thinking I might have to do like a fundraiser stream, but I don't. I love my regular audience, and I'm completely understanding that I know a lot of you would like to help but can't. And I get that, and I understand that. And so it feels like, I'm preaching to the same group of people, and I don't want people to feel pressured. I don't want people to feel guilted into it, because I absolutely want people to make sure you have everything you need first. That is hands down. Make sure you have everything you need first before you donate to my channel for whatever reason. So unless I can tap into like a larger audience, maybe an audience that doesn't know me as well, I don't know if there's much point in me doing like a fundraiser show to try to, cover off the cost of the table and now my car and all that sort of stuff. And I also feel bad because I keep on having to ask. Because, last year it was vet bills and more car repairs, much more expensive car repairs too. So let's just say this is extreme motivation for me to get my TYT essays done, because I'm really hoping that at a bare minimum, they can get my channel a big enough boost that I can just get by on that. Philip Blair, I would donate some of my UBI. Why, thank you. So yeah, it's motivation for me to work on my TYT essays, because here's hoping that, it just helps my channel out a little bit so that I can scrape by type thing. And I've been, again, not physically well, okay, I wrote down a couple things for my book. It's dangerous territory for me to do that, because the instant I start writing things down for Necroplasm, I risk crossing the threshold of like, I'm just going to start writing everything down, and then the TYT essay will never get done. But I had to write down something because I've realized a naming convention for the vampires, like how they get their names and stuff like that. And sometimes when I'm out for my walks and I'm thinking about it, one of their names will just be spoken to me. It's kind of like, the voice of God comes in and it's like, this is a character's name. So I don't necessarily choose these names. They just kind of come to me, and I had to write these down so I don't forget them. And the real kicker is I can't pronounce some of them. Not well, anyway. Like, for Vincent's vampirish name, it took me a long time to figure out how to make it audible, because I could hear it in my head, and it's kind of like I can see a picture in my head, but it can take me a while to figure out, like, to draw it, or I need a reference. And so I could hear Vincent's vampirish name in my head, but I was having trouble speaking it. With Michael's, it's a little easier. Raphael's super easy, though. Super easy. Everyone can pronounce that one. So it's because there's the main character, Minuet, and then her vampirish name is Minlunlai. So it's Minuet Minlunlai. So that one, fairly easy. Raphael is Endelin. So his name is Raphael Endelin. And Endelin means love personified, or beloved type thing. So, you know, their names have meanings. It's from their old tongue. Back, the elders used to speak with it, and then they switched over when the current vampires came into being. So Endelin is love personified, or beloved, and then Minlunlai, it's basically like a supermoon, the brightest moment of a full moon. So yeah. But I'm almost embarrassed to try to pronounce Vincent's and Michael's names because they're a bit more tricky. But I do know their meanings. Michael's name is Chosen, but a lot of vampires in his generation have that name for reasons. Vincent's name basically means a savant, or a person of great intelligence. But I'm having a real difficult time with his name. Because, again, the elders were around 4,200 years ago, before, you know, our constructs of race and things of that sort. And the ancients made sure to find samples from all around the world. So one thing I wanted to make sure, because I know with, like, Tolkien, he made an Elvish language for Lords of the Rings. It's very European. And I don't want the names of all my vampires to sound necessarily European, even if they themselves were born in a European country, because the vampires don't really care about geography like that, because they're one culture, more or less. You know, little subcultures depending on where they live, but their language is a reflection of all the cultures. And so it's tricky, because I'm also somewhat sheltered, so I'm going to have to learn more about different languages from around the world to find different inflections and stuff that is used. So it's a bit tricky. Let's see. Philip Blair, watch clips of Jerry Lewis telethons for muscular dystrophy for ideas on fundraising. And cool, it's awesome when characters start talking to the authors. It's not that they're talking to me, it's just like I kind of realize things that are happening in their world. And so suddenly it's like their name will come to me, but it's not because they're sitting there talking to me. It's just because it comes up in their conversations that they're having with each other, or it just dawns on me. And what's really weird is when it happens in reverse. Like, something happens in reverse, that it's almost like there's a part of my brain thinking forward than even I'm consciously aware of. Because for a long time, I knew that Raphael, who is Minuet's kin, so basically like her child, referred to her as Min Min. You know, because they don't refer to a mother or a father or anything. And his cute little nickname for her was Min Min. And he was her kin. And I already knew that for months, that that's what he called her, but I didn't really know why, until I found out that if Raphael then has a kin, that would be Minuet's kin. And it doesn't matter how many generations they go down, they're referred to as kin. So the kin of the kin of the kin of the kin is kin. And so when Raphael heard that phrase, kin, He just instantly started referring to Minuet. Well, you're my Min. So it, like, that actually happened in the opposite way. I don't know why. Oh. The Wild West, I'm opening an Etsy because I'm broke now. Goodbye, jewelry. I hope it helps. And by all means, feel free to plug your link. Philip Blair, if you listen to a linguist reading an Old English text, it sounds just like Elvish. For example, when they're reading from Vulnerable Bay. Yeah, it's almost Shakespearean in the flow and things of that sort. And I don't want that. I really don't. Because, you know, far too often vampires are like European tropes of different sorts. These are global. You know, vampires can be found from every culture type thing. So I wanted to reflect that. Anyway, I am like totally rambling here. Let's see, how are we doing for people? Okay, we're getting almost into the double digits. Let me know if I'm like boring the shit out of you before we actually get into like the wildfire news. There is a bit of it. And there's, you know, it's a mix between me reading articles and videos. So there's that at least. Let me plug in my headphones now that I remembered that I have videos to show. I had a ton of links saved up. And so I actually went through them today to just kind of discard some of them that were duplicates I didn't need, or just be like, why don't I just find a video that's recent about the fires in Spain and France and stuff. Philip Blair of Vulnerable Bay book was recently discovered in a library in Italy. It was news when the historians read a passage I thought Elvish, late 600s, early 700s. I read a horrifying tweet that reminded me of, that tweet that your comments reminded me of, where a lot of these tech giants are finding rare books and scanning them, but the process involves ripping up the spine and then they shred the book because they want their AI to be better. So they're finding like all these rare books to put through a shredder. And if they do that with all the rare books they come across, we will have no accurate account of history. Like none. There will be no way to verify a lot of what history was if they get rid of the books. Because spoken word, which like a lot of First Nations, that's how their history was relayed, through stories and storytellers, and it was just spoken throughout the generations. But with cultures that have relied on documentation like books, if you get rid of all of them and put them into a machine where you can't then rely on the accuracy of it, that it hasn't been manipulated, coerced, changed, like just flat out changed. It's so fucking 1984. Oh, yeah. Philip, that is disturbing. I was horrified when I read that. Anyway, why don't we get into it? Because like I said, I do have a fair bit to go through. And yeah, if I get $1 bazillion today in the live stream, I will show a sneak peek of the TYT essay. I finished a part that I'm like, damn, that's gonna hurt. That I'm kind of proud of. And I want to take the parts that I'm proud of, because sometimes I ebb and flow overthinking, this is just going to fall so flat, and other times where I'm thinking, yeah, it's okay. And then other times I'm like, oh, this is good. And so this is an, oh, this is good part. So yeah. So let's get into this. I'll click on this screen. So hopefully, let's see. We go to news. No. Sometimes I have to fix it. It's not like that's a bad one. It's just not the one that I wanted. I want this one. There we go. So I will toss this link into the sandbox for people. Because it's an important link to have kind of on hand. And this is the live fire map. And so if I refresh it, it'll start doing this little moving around thing so that you can see the progression. So pause it if that's too annoying, the flickering, which it is for me. And so you can see the smoke coverage, but then you can also zoom in and get a better idea of where the fires are, how bad the smoke is on a glance. It does some predictions. So the thing is I don't know how accurate this is because I'm pretty sure the fires in Northern Ontario are still an issue. Even though it's not looking like it right now. So like this here is my area, so we do have some smoke coverage today, which would explain why it smelled like a campfire when I went out today. So yeah. And then it looks like I'll be getting a bit of a break from the smoke, yeah. But it's very handy to have if you're in North America. Even though the map goes to like Europe, it doesn't show Europe fires. I imagine there's another link for that. So yeah, important to have. It does, you know, some predictions and things of that sort. That's always good. Now, something that's going to be important to understand going forward, or just when you're hearing the news, is what is a hectare? Not a name, the actual measurement of space, because we hear numbers of like, ooh, 300,000 hectares or something of that sort. And it's hard to visualize. How big is that? Because I don't think people fully grasp how big the Earth is. Because in Canada, we have the boreal rainforest. It's actually a rainforest, and it's the boreal rainforest. It is fucking massive. And again, it's hard for people to comprehend how big this world is. Europeans can kind of grasp it a bit better talking about Canada than we can because, you know, when their country is just like the UK is just the size of southwestern Ontario. And so if I say, oh yeah, it would take me a good 24 hours to drive north out of this province, it's kind of mind-boggling of the amount of space that you're covering. So it's probably a good idea just to kind of get an idea as to what a hectare is, talking about all of this. So here we have this image here. So we have square kilometer is also 0.386 square miles. And over here, so this is 1 square kilometer. This here is 100 acres right here. A hectare is 10,000 square meters. So let's close that. Or here we have this image. The playing field is a little over a hectare in size. And so a lot of us can visualize a sports field. Okay, so that's a little over a hectare in size. No, a hectare is 10,000 or 1,000? It says it in here. So why don't I just go here? So we have unit here. Oh yeah, it's 10,000. So 1 hectare is 10,000 square meters. And then if we go down here, 1 hectare is 2.471 acres, or over 100,000 square feet. But here it is, 0.3861 square miles. And it's 1 square kilometer. If I'm understanding all of this, I get confused with all of these conversions and stuff. But again, sports field I can understand, and that's a little over a hectare in size. So here we have this other graph here. So this is 10 meters by 10 meters. That's 100 meters squared. So 1 hectare equals 100 A here, which equals 10,000 square meters. So yeah, that's our metric system for you. But here we also have British Imperial United States system so that we can, again, just get an idea of what we're dealing with. Oh, so a hectare, one single hectare is 0.01 square kilometer. Because it's 10,000 square kilometers. A square kilometer is one... That doesn't sound right. A million square meters or 1,000 square hectares. Oh, I get confused. I get confused with this. It's big. It's big. Hopefully you can understand this. But me and my dyslexia, this is really throwing me off because, you know, a million square meters seems like a lot of that's really big. So we also have here a hectare, an acre, 100 meters. Again, just trying to give people an idea. Oh, that's really small. That doesn't help. Yeah. Okay, so enough of that. Or Trafalgar Square has an area of about 1 hectare. So I think people can also understand when you start doing things like that. Or I think it was saying the Greater Toronto Area is, let's see. No, okay, that's not found. Somewhere I was saying like the Greater Toronto, I think it's in an article of how much area is burning. Comparing it to the Greater Toronto Area, but that's only good if you live in southwestern Ontario. Somebody upset with my pronunciation of Hector? But as I've been cataloging all my links, going back through my live streams, because I want to find, you know, all the controversies around Mark Carney and Doug Ford since Mark Carney has been leader of the Liberal Party, so not even prime minister, but just leader of the Liberal Party, and since the last election of Doug Ford's. I come across old links from a year ago, and this one I was reminded of, and it's like, yeah, this is part of the problem. Our leaders don't fucking care about us. Not at all. A little throwback, Alberta Premier demands apology from fire-stricken town of Jasper. And I remember this now, because part of the problem with Jasper, and this is also the same issue with a lot of First Nations, is that it's federally regulated land. So, because it was a federal park. So the province and the federal government will get into arguments over who's going to pay for it, which is, you know, problematic for a lot of reasons. And the town of Jasper was just, you know, dissing Danielle Smith about her work. And she's like, how dare you call me out? Hello, Boku. So Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is demanding the fire-stricken town of Jasper apologize and retract a report criticizing her government for its role in last summer's devastating blaze. Yeah. So it's like these leaders, they don't care about us, and then they want us to apologize when we call them out for their inaction. It won't be long before Doug Ford does the exact same fucking thing. Because a lot of people are calling him out right now. We'll be getting to that later. But a lot of people are calling him out. And it won't be long before he acting like I'm the victim. Everyone's piling in on me. Do you know how hard it is to be premier? Like, I have to account for all these things, you know? It's not my fault that all these fires happened and blah, 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 blah. He's going to do that at some point because he's getting a fuck ton of pressure right now. But, you know, if your leaders don't care about an entire community burning down, I'm just throwing this in here because it's related to climate change. Court orders Alberta prison to take steps to protect inmates from extreme heat. A lot of prisons don't have air conditioning. So the inmates are just supposed to suffer in excruciating heat. And if our leaders literally don't fucking care about entire communities being burnt to ash, they're not going to care about inmates. They're not going to care about people with disabilities. They're not going to care about immigrants. You know, definitely, again, First Nations, they really do not care about them. So we have to keep this in mind when we elect these fucktards. Sorry, I'm swearing a lot lately, aren't I? I should probably reel that in a little bit. Try to, anyway. It's just sometimes I get so frustrated, it comes out. But, yeah. I can't say I'm shocked about this. It's the same, like, if somebody is anti-Semitic, you're going to find out they're also Islamophobic and homophobic. You know, it's rarely ever like they're completely fine with one and not the other. And so if they're okay with First Nations burning down, they're okay with inmates suffering in the heat and possibly dying of heat stroke. So Ottawa, as the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal prepares to hear a separate case about extreme heat in prisons, the federal court has directed an Alberta prison to take steps to install air conditioning to protect inmates. Yes, you know, prisons shouldn't just be a place where people go in and be tortured. I'm all for dismantling and reinventing how the correctional system works, and I wouldn't even call it correctional system because I believe in restorative justice and all that sort of stuff. If all we do is send people into prisons where they are tortured from the heat, from abuse, from whatever reason, they're not going to come out better than when they went in. And shouldn't that be the goal? That when they come out, they don't do whatever it was they did in the first place? What kind of crime they did? That they can then be, you know, healthy members of society? Isn't that the goal? And also, you know, this can lead to heat stroke. This can lead to people dying. And, you know, what was their crime? You know, shoplifting or something. Suddenly things like that now become a death sentence. So the court said Correctional Service Canada had failed to put an effective solution in place at the Edmonton Institution for Women's Secure Unit despite complaints about extreme heat that go back 2 decades. The excessively high temperatures have caused inmates to suffer panic attacks, psychological distress, and sleep deprivation. It is a long-standing problem. CSC has known of a design problem with the temperature regulation equipment in Secure since as early as 2012. Justice Megan Conroy wrote in a July 26 decision. One affidavit from inmate housed in 2018 in a corner cell nicknamed the Oven said a maintenance worker recorded a temperature of over 40 degrees C in her cell. Again, for you Americans, that's like getting into the 110s in Fahrenheit. Which, again, that can be lethal. Conroy wrote that while Correctional Services Canada said it routinely monitors temperatures in Secure, remarkably, it kept no written records of its temperature readings. Yeah, they do that when they don't want people to know. The court directed Correctional Services Canada to record temperature readings in the unit and asked for authorization to install air conditioning. A spokesperson for the Correctional Services Canada said in an email statement the agency is reviewing the federal court decision. Anyway, I'll toss the rest of this into the sandbox so that you can see that. Hello, Rusty. Welcome to the sandbox. Hopefully I haven't missed anyone. Oh, Moomy, hello. So this one is not a full article that we'll be reading. It's just them trying to direct us to their video on it, which I recommend people go watch. It's almost a half hour long though, so we won't be watching it. And The Breach is a fantastic resource for progressive Canadian independent news. So why is the CBC's reporting on wildfires ignoring the role of climate change? Tara Mahoney sits down with Desmond Cole to discuss the climate gaps in CBC's wildfire coverage. Climate change is caused by the burning of fossil fuels is making extreme wildfire seasons more common in Canada. But if you were to tune into the CBC News, you might not even make the connection. So the CBC News has issues. So often what they do report on is accurate. You can believe it. But what they do is exclude a lot. So they can be a little bit biased on the perspective that they have on. So they won't mention things like genocide in Gaza or Palestinians and have their perspective on, but they'll have a lot of Zionist perspectives on. And it's basically, they're very establishment biased. So they're not biased towards the liberals or the conservatives because all of them, the media and those two parties, are establishment. They're just establishment. So CBC is definitely establishment bias. So they're not going to be reporting on flat out climate change. They'll report on symptoms without naming the cause. It's like, this person just collapsed to the ground while clutching their heart. But they'll never mention it was a heart attack or what caused it. So that's the type of thing that CBC does. So Tara Mahoney sits down with Desmond Cole. Yeah. So The Breach Show is our podcast featuring sharp analysis. And so like I said, this is about a half hour long. So I'll toss the link in here so that you can watch it through their website here, or you can go and watch it right on YouTube on The Breach's channel. And I recommend you do. To be honest, I haven't watched it yet. I'm planning on it. But I have no doubt it's definitely worth a watch. And then I wanted to show just a couple of images that are haunting. Like these are the type of images that will be in historical museums of like, this is the moment the world should have done something. That it should have really, and it's not even the image of the destruction. It's the image of the normalcy. It's the zone of interest. Right now, the entire fucking world is living in the zone of interest where these calamities are happening, but people are just accepting of it. And I think a lot of historical analysis, if we get far enough in the future where there can be a historical analysis, are going to look back at images like this was the turning point as to if the world survives or not. So in the future analysis, it's going to be them in horrendous conditions, barely scraping by, or it's going to be in a world where still won't be perfect, but at least they've tried to mitigate the damage. Because it does not matter what we do right now. Climate change is still moving forward. It's like a freight train or what are those really big fucking ships called? You know what I'm talking about. The momentum is going to carry it forward. So it does not matter what we do right now. It's going to get worse. What needs to happen right now is mitigation and eventual turning that back around. So we have to have proper infrastructure put in place. We have to be doing the renewable energies to cut down on costs. Even things like, solar energy and stuff like that. It keeps the world slightly cooler because it doesn't produce heat to make the same way as other things do, like coal, So we have to mitigate, and again, a lot of that has to do with infrastructure. We have to migrate where communities are, because there's going to be a lot of communities that will be in areas that are no longer hospitable, be it from extreme heat. Flooding is another issue. Coastlines is another issue. And this needs to happen. We can do it now, a little bit more gradually, or there's going to be a massive climate refugee crisis, more so than there is right now, because we already have people fleeing communities and whatnot. We need to have more investment in, instead of a military that goes out and fights war, we should have a Canadian Armed Forces that fights climate change, that will go into areas that are devastated by wildfires and help people out or help to evacuate people. Same with floods. We need to have mass mobilizations of that type of thing, where you have groups of people that can go into a community and help rebuild it, but rebuild it sustainably, with fire-resistant material, with solar panels, with all of that sort of stuff. It shouldn't be that when a community is destroyed, it's rebuilt the same. We can't have that anymore. And it used to be, I heard on a documentary somewhere, that was every month a city was being wiped out in North America. I would hazard to guess that's higher now. And that's through, again, like hurricanes, wildfires, flooding, all of that, tornadoes, all of this extreme climate stuff. Super tankers, yes, Philip Blair, super tankers. Who needs to drink some electrolytes? Are you talking about me? Am I doing like a lot of mouth weird noises right now? I might be. I'm not drinking electrolytes. Okay, so on to the images that I was just talking about. And so holiday in the climate emergency. No, it's not AI or edited. This is a photo. Just look at it on my phone. This is a beach in France. France. I'm saying things wrong right now. I wanted to call it French. It's not. It's France. 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 Hydration for the whole sandbox. Yes, we don't want a dry, yucky sandbox. But this is the normalization. This is, a complete zone of interest right now with climate change, that here is the smoke from this devastating wildfire. The sky is orange. And people are still going on vacation to the beach, acting like everything's fine. You have that meme of the dog sitting in the burning house saying, this is fine. That's what they might as well be doing right here. It's just sitting there saying, this is fine. That smoke over there, it's whatever. We still, we're still going to the beach. Things are still going to go on as normal. And then this is the second one. So this person has a whole breakdown of how powerful this image is, but let's look at the image. Like, this could have been a painting from the 80s where they're trying to warn us about what's to come if we do nothing. Just very, very zone of interest vibes coming from this. Sitting down, enjoying the beach while, the world around you is on fire. Because again, people are so, this is why the world will never work together. People are just so focused on themselves. Well, I need a vacation. It was my day. I was planning on going to the beach, so I'm going to go to the beach. It's, no care about what's going on in the rest of the world. It's all about me, 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 me. What was my plan? What was I going to do? I'm not going to let, a forest fire that's happening somewhere else stop me from enjoying my day. Ugh. And it's also, oh, I had the word in my head, just this is apathy next level. Like, this is hyper apathy, where it's like, well, there's nothing I can do about it, so I'll do nothing. I'll just go about my life, whatever. There's nothing I can do about it. It's like a next level apathy that people are feeling right now. I'll do a slow scroll through this person's breakdown of this image. It's interesting. Just starts off, this photo absolutely deserves every award it has in its... It even has its place in the Louvre. So they just break down the image and why it's so, you know, poignant. And you can just read that on the screen if you like. I need to make sure I don't overspeak right now because I feel like I'm going to wear out early. That's what happens when I do like a 5-hour-long live stream one night and then try to do a live stream the next night. And there's still a fair bit to get to. So let's go back to main shot. So that's it for that docket. I will keep up those things there. Actually, I'll keep the pictures up too. I want to save the pictures for later. And then we're getting into international. So this is going to follow pretty much, you know, the same vibe as my regular news stream. I'm going to do international, federal, and provincial. Now that we've done some educating. But just checking. Yeah, okay. Again, welcome everyone to the SandBox. And everyone who's watching, I super appreciate it. I know this is not my regular time to be doing a live stream. Although, you all did vote for it yesterday. I'm just saying. Everyone voted. I think, yeah, I don't think anyone voted for Tuesday. You all voted for Monday. Because you had the option of doing this Monday or Tuesday, and everyone voted Monday. So, here I am. Oops. We're going to get into some footage now. Disclaimer. I don't know. I wish this wasn't the case. Please forgive me if it turns out some of these images aren't accurate. Like they're from a different event or they're AI generated. There's only so much I can do, but I do know that there's images out there that are from different wildfires from different times and stuff. And it's getting impossible sometimes to check sources. So there are a couple like YouTube videos from actual news networks. Those should be a little bit more accurate, but these videos that I'm showing you from Twitter, I'm showing them in good faith, you know, hoping that they are what they claim to be. And just putting that out there. Okay, so let's go back to news. And there we go. So, this account on Twitter has been tweeting out a lot of this. Just guessing by their name, Volcaholic, Volcanoholic. I imagine that they are like a natural disaster extreme weather buff based on their bio and stuff like that, which is something that used to be a special interest of mine, and I still dabble in it as a special interest, that being natural disasters. I still find them fascinating. I love my natural disaster slasher flicks in the movie theaters. So I tend to know a little bit more about the functionings of natural disasters than the average person, but I have forgotten some information. But it is something I'd like to get back into, physical geography in general. And so this person's saying climate change is coming for us all. And last night it reached the heart of Scotland's capital. You know, when I think of things like Scotland, Ireland, England, I don't think of dry conditions. I envision fog and rain for reasons. You know, I don't necessarily envision tinder dry conditions that would allow for fires to break out in cities like this. And it's only, so we've already had cities with tens of thousands of people be hit, where they've had to evacuate. There's been flare-ups in much larger cities. The day will come where a city of millions will have to evacuate. That is impossible. It is impossible to do that. If you're in an area where there's even the slightest possibility of this, have a grab bag ready to go. You know, a week's supply of medication. Hell, throw in some cans of food and water, clothing, you know, your passport, ID, all of that sort of stuff. Have that in a grab bag ready to go. Because as we'll see in some of these videos, you won't have time. So last week I was talking about a First Nations community, Collins, that was wiped out by a forest fire. They had to leave by boat because they don't have roads that go in there. They had to leave by boat, and they had about an hour's warning, and it wasn't from the government. I believe CN Rail called into their community to warn them it was approaching. Because, you know, it all depends on the direction of the smoke, all this sort of stuff. But these fires move fucking fast. Oh my God, I'm swearing again, aren't I? Like, just, you have like a piece of paper that's really, really dry and you put a match on it. You can see how fast that flares up. It takes no time. All of a sudden, it's like a little corners burn and boom. When you have paper dry conditions, these fires will move insanely fast, and they even make their own weather systems. Let me just, because what will happen is an indraft will happen because the heat will pull in like the colder air around it and that sort of thing. So it creates their own weather systems, wind systems in particular. And so the wind will then make it move faster, make the flames fan out higher. Some of these flames are the size of buildings, like big buildings. They're stories tall, some of these flames. But yeah, it's only a matter of time before this hits like a massive populated system or area where it's not just hitting a part of it, it's going to wipe out the entire city. And there's nothing we can do to combat it because it's such a big thing. It's like trying to fight a hurricane. Literally, some of these develop fire tornadoes because of the wind and how it goes in and interacts with the flame. So yeah, this is in Holroyd Park in Edinburgh. Next, we're going to get into a YouTube video. I tried to find ones that were current. So this one is from 2 days ago, but it's talking about, you know, again, just the scale of everything. And then I have this one, and it's 1 day ago. And then I also have this one from 3 hours ago. So we'll see some of the progression that's happening here. And these again are European. So we have Spain, France, Italy, Scotland right now that are really being hit hard. Owen Jones just released a video on it too, which I'll be watching later. So let's get into it.
10 days on, and despite being fought on the ground and from the air, still the fires burn. On Friday night, the wildfires were declared a major incident. Changing winds, accelerating the spread of the blaze, prompted Police Scotland to evacuate the village of Nethy Bridge. A fire break has been established around the village as fire crews try to establish breaks in other areas to slow the fire's relentless advance. The firefighters' efforts have been widely praised, but many think the government's response should have been quicker and more decisive.
This is the worst fire we've had here in living memory, and probably a lot longer than living memory. We feel completely let down by the Scottish Government, who dithered. Last Wednesday and Thursday, they were saying that they had sufficient resources to fight the blaze. We need to have in place a contract helicopter system between, let's say, April and September, the fire season, that there is always a helicopter available for instant dispatch.
The Scottish Government's Resilience Room, the equivalent of COBRA, was again reconvened early on Saturday. Ministers maintained that appropriate resources are available.
We've had helicopters available throughout the course.
Again, these fires, they're expanding on such a level where our ability to fight them hasn't kept up. It's kind of like with technology. You know, we have the internet out there and all this sort of stuff, but our regulations, our laws haven't kept up with the speed of advancement with technologies. Our responsibility, not one word, response ability, are the fleets that we have in place to fight things like fires and whatnot hasn't kept up with the speed that they've been increasingly getting worse. So there's been a disproportionate growth. So same with housing, you know, housing hasn't kept up with the population growth. And so then it keeps on getting worse and worse and worse. And that gap keeps on getting bigger. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, now we have to spend like $1 billion on it. Whereas if they have kept up with it more in the first place, it wouldn't have been so bad. They'd be able to tackle the fires sooner. Because always, always, always they go into, well, it costs so much to do this and that and the other thing. The cost of rebuilding after a climate disaster is far, far more than it would have been preventative. Same as in healthcare. You know, preventative healthcare is far, far, far cheaper than dealing with everyone when they're basically dying. It's better for it to not happen in the first place. And so if they're able to tackle these fires right from the get-go before they expand, it's better. And so it is far, far cheaper to invest in preventative measures, to invest in proper firefighting fleets, water bombers, helicopters, all that sort of stuff, to have spotters out there to see the fires when they first start, to make sure that they can get to those locations on time, because one of the major issues here in Canada is that a lot of these are just so remote. And then it feels like, well, it's so remote, it's not going to hit a community until it does.
Of this week. We have 2 available today, and we're expecting that to increase tomorrow. Of course, we keep under review our response to the ever-growing threat of wildfires, and having aerial support is part of that tactical response, as is ensuring that we have the necessary ground support to be able to tackle these wildfires.
Despite those reassurances, Scotland's First Minister has now confirmed that a request has been made to the UK government for military assistance in aerial support to supplement existing resources. Those who know the area well say they've never seen fires like this.
We could see the smoke probably about 4.5, maybe 5 miles away from where we are. It is significant, the impact that it's had on the area. And I myself have seen, you know, fires before, but this is something.
So just want to back up to this image here. So this is one of the issues with the fires that people don't necessarily understand when they're trying to flee from them. It's not just the flame you have to be wary of. It's the smoke. You can suffocate. So some people might go for a lake or something of that sort. But then if the smoke goes over the lake, you can't breathe unless you have some sort of artificial air pocket with you. So like you overturn a boat or something of that sort, but then that's only temporary. Like that only helps you for, you know, a very, very short time. So that's one of the things that you have to be wary of when you're trying to flee a fire, is the smoke can also kill you, not just the flame.
And I myself have seen, you know, fires before, but this is something of it looks like an apocalyptic scale.
Smoke warnings have been issued to areas downwind of the wildfires, and the fire service has appealed for more bulldozers and heavy equipment to help it in what at times must seem an almost impossible task.
So I'm just going to click on this one. It's from Democracy Now!
In France.
We won't be watching it because it's 15 minutes long, and to help with my stream and my sanity, I'm trying to do shorter videos. But this is a video I do plan on watching myself. I recommend people watch it. And then there's this one here from Owen Jones, which I will be watching later on, probably
Like the
tonight.
end of the
That's also like 15, well, it's 16 minutes long. So I'll toss this into the sandbox. Yeah, that was quite the beard, Boku. Pretty awesome beard. On to the next video about this from BBC. So over 250,000 of a people had to flee. Again, people don't understand the scale of these evacuations that are having to happen. And it's having to happen in a moment's notice. Think of the roads outside your cities. If they get clogged with cars, where are you going to go? How are you going to get out? Also, I've talked about this a long time ago when I was just doing video essays and I was talking about the wildfires and the heat dome in BC. People with disabilities are more likely to end up dead in these situations. If you can't flee a, a natural disaster, then you die. So if it's a flood and you can't run, if it's a fire and you can't run, you don't make it out. So that would include people who are maybe blind, people who are deaf and can't hear the warnings, people who use any sort of mobility device from a cane to a wheelchair. So if you, again, you're in an area where there's any possibility of this being a risk, you need to have a plan, but also if you know anyone with disabilities, include them in that plan. So seniors, a neighbor, or something of that sort, make sure they get out too. Because when the time comes and suddenly you have to leave, that's not the time to be figuring all of this out. So let's watch this one.
Wildfires continue to burn out of control in France and Spain tonight, with more than 250,000 people being ordered to leave their homes. Italy has also been very badly hit. Officials in Spain say one person has died in a separate fire near the city of Valencia in the east of the country, and the authorities say a blaze near Madrid is currently beyond the capacity of firefighters to contain. In southwest France, all of the Cap Ferret Peninsula and nearby Le Porge have been evacuated. Tens of thousands have also left several areas near Bordeaux as flames approach the outer suburbs. Further down the coast, near the town of Biscarrosse, another fire is out of control. Here's Joe Inwood.
I'm glad he's pronouncing it, not me.
It's not hard to understand why these wildfires have spread. They are said to be the most severe Spain has ever faced.
So again, a lot of this weather that you're seeing here, this wind, is being caused by the fire because of the indraft that happens with the heat and whatnot. So yeah, they make their own little micro weather systems. And that's part of the reason why they become so difficult to predict. Because you can look at meteorology and be like, well, the weather system is supposed to be this and that and the other thing, but then this totally throws a wrench into it. It's a factor that can't be accounted for. And so these weather systems change any predictions that might happen. It can change the direction of the fire. It can change the intensity of the fire. Like I said, there's fire tornadoes. It can cause more lightning. Like, it's just, there's a lot of issues that comes with these little weather systems that are created. The danger, because you see all this smoke and ash that's being blown around. You know, if you're not wearing protective gear, you're breathing that in, or something can get into your eyes. It's dangerous.
Wildfires have spread. They are said to be the most severe Spain has ever faced. The first to be declared a national emergency. For days, firefighters have done their best to keep them from Madrid. Two fires merged. They could soon connect to another, presenting an unprecedented threat to Spain's capital. Tens of thousands of people have been forced to flee their homes, taking shelter with friends, family, or here at a government-run centre.
Bueno, It's a difficult time because you feel utterly powerless. You don't know what's going on, whether your house is on fire. You lose all your belongings, everything, and then let's see who helps you. Nobody helps you.
While wildfires are a naturally occurring phenomenon, there is nothing natural about the scale of these. An exceptionally wet winter led to high levels of plant growth, which was then dried out by the hottest start to the year on record. Human-induced climate change to blame.
BBC is saying it. Human-induced climate change is to blame. That is accurate. Because I was worried there for a moment they were just going to explain, oh, well, we had a wet winter, so there's lots of growth, and then it dried out, and that's what caused it. So it's nice that they actually refer to human-induced climate change, because that is exactly the cause of all of this. Because if this was damp vegetation, these fires would not be able to spread the way that they are. Because again, the boreal forest is a rainforest. You know, the soil and everything, it's being dried out because our winters aren't even producing enough snow. Canada has a lot of fresh water, and that's because of snow. That's because of winter. And we're starting to run out of that. So underground water and lakes and rivers and stuff that might help keep other area moist and stuff, it's all going away. And so it's becoming a big tinderbox.
It's a point repeatedly made by Spain's Prime Minister, who called for international action.
Porque por desgracia la ciencia, si algo nos dice,
we should work on a state agreement against the climate emergency, because science is telling us the temperatures are going to get more intense, are going to get worse, and are going to have a greater impact on our lives.
The consequences are not only being felt in Spain. In France, the Gironde region is also facing a crisis unlike anything it's seen before. Huge swathes of this popular tourist area are being consumed by flames. Overnight evacuation orders.
We saw a little bit of one right there. That there. That's just a little swirl that happened. But some of these can get right up into the sky, these little funnels, these fire funnels. So just keep your eye on it. Here we go.
Swathes of this popular tourist area are being consumed by flames.
And you see how that
Overnight,
moves.
evacuation orders were sent to residents of villages to the west of Bordeaux, but some did not get the warning. This was filmed by an American tourist, Rebecca Papin, in the town of Biscarrosse. She missed the alarm and is now trapped there with her children.
So they went to sleep, I put in earplugs, and I went to sleep. And apparently during the night, while I had in my earplugs, they evacuated the city. And when they came to my home, which I'm sure that they did, I didn't hear them. It is scary. And the thing is that the main roads are on fire. So I can't leave the city. All around me are thousands and thousands of acres of pine trees, and they're all on fire.
France has deployed military aircraft, but, like Spain, has also requested help from the EU. 7 water bombers have been sent. But the main hope they have is for a change in the weather. Next week is set to see extreme heat return. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
So this makes it difficult, like dangerous for firefighters as well, to fight these fires, because they risk getting heat stroke. They risk dying because of this. Because they have the heat from just like the heat domes that they're in, and then the heat from the fire, because you see this little video here, again, you see how big these flames are. They're stories tall, you know? You could be on the 4th floor of an apartment and it would be right at eye level. The amount of heat that radiates off from these would be excruciating. So it's so dangerous. And, you know, Boku or Philip Blair is just saying, stop sending bulldozers to the Israelis. Yeah. Just imagine for a moment if all the money that we were spending on the military and war and helping with the genocide that's happening in Gaza, Imagine if all that money went towards fighting these fires. You know, equipment for fighting these fires. You know, Canada will invest billions into new submarines or jets or something. But what about spending billions on water bombers that we can use? You know, a water bomber is cheaper than a jet, so we'd even get more bang for the buck. Yeah, if we mobilize the same way this government mobilizes for war, killing machines, we could get this under control. So the Surf's just tweeting out here, at what point did the world leaders just completely give up and stop being able to even say the word climate change? Now in press conferences, they talk about droughts and arsonists. Well, we're breaking heat records year after year. So we just saw the leader of Spain acknowledge that it's climate change. The thing is that there has to be more than even critical mass of leaders acknowledging this, and then they have to do something about it. Because if only half the global leaders do something about it, the other half is going to fuck it up for everyone. Oh, I'm swearing again. Muck it up for everyone. You know, all of the big polluters of the world have to acknowledge this, have to do something about it. Because if even one continues on this route, this world is... And so this is the tweet here. The Madrid region is facing the world's worst wildfire in its history, with more than 25,000 hectares burned. And we went over how big a hectare is at the beginning of the stream. 70,000 people have been evacuated. We're going to live through some complicated hours. The priority is to save lives, declared the Prime Minister. And so again, just look at the size of this. And they had to run from it because it moves so fast. And if there's a slight change in the wind, it's coming for you. Like, it's an avalanche. It's basically an avalanche. Like, look at the size of those flames. But yeah, it's fire avalanches that are happening. Okay, another YouTube video. So this one is from just 3 hours ago. It'll be more like 4 hours now. We're not going to watch the whole thing because it is over 13 minutes long, but we'll just get some updates and then I'll toss the link into the sandbox.
Well, the village of Le Porge has borne the brunt of this. 183 houses have been destroyed here, and cruelly, why some of them are absolutely fine. The one behind me and so many others are completely gutted, and it just goes to show how erratic, how unpredictable this fire is. On the 10-minute drive in here, either side of the road, everything was completely blackened. It was smouldering. It's devastated these communities. It's devastated the natural environment, and it will continue to do so because wildfires like this can take weeks and even months to extinguish. Croatian helicopters caught the inferno in Gironde from above. A multi-country response still unable to contain this. France's largest wildfire since World War II. Today, below in a forest near the city of Bordeaux, the flames had only just been snuffed out when another fire started. 6 fire engines have just arrived to tackle that blaze over there. I've just been told that it only started 10 minutes ago, and really that's all it takes. Just the smallest ember, as long as it has material to burn, will blow up into something like that very quickly. Moments.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's really, really hard to fully put these fires out because embers don't necessarily produce smoke. So you don't even know they're there. And then suddenly the wind picks it up, puts it into another batch of dry leaves, and it starts all over again.
Later, with flames dwarfing the fire engines, a plane carrying fire retardant flew over, as well as helicopters carrying water. And they kept coming. This firefighter shouted for the team to head in a different direction as another front opened up. It's relentless, exhausting and dangerous work, with 4 injured overnight.
There have been instances of like entire fire teams being killed in wildfires. You know, that was back when they used to make movies about that sort of thing. You know, when you look for people who are brave, who are willing to put their lives on the line for others, it's these people. It's exhausting, it's hard work, it's heat, it'll make you sick, it'll make you want to quit, but they're doing this to save your home, to save your lives. And it is exceedingly dangerous line of work. So all of these people, the people who are fighting these fires, are heroes.
Microclimate called a pyrocumulonimbus, generating winds and lightning that can restart fires elsewhere.
Can you tell me why it's so difficult to contain this kind of fire?
C'est très difficile parce que d'abord c'est un feu qui est
It's so difficult because it's very, very big. It's now more than 100,000 acres, which has never happened before.
Je dirais bombe nucléaire météorologique.
It is, to be frank, a meteorological nuclear bomb. It is changing all the
So again, we went over how big a hectare is, but just think 100,000 sports fields. And even, it's like I can visualize a sport field. I still, like, these numbers are just so big. It's hard to comprehend the size of these fires. It's almost, I think, if somebody who is better at this than me, if they could do a thing online where they put the size of the fires and they group them all together, and then they can put them over like different areas of land so that we could see, like, this is the overall size of the fires that are burning right now. I think that would be very eye-opening to a lot of people. If we could just condense all the fires that are happening right now into one spot so that you could see, like, put it over Ontario so you could see how big it is relative to Ontario, or put it over Europe so you can see how relative it is to Europe. If you know anyone who could pull that off, that'd be really, I think, enlightening for a lot of people as to how big these fires are.
Du périmètre dans lequel on est change continuellement.
Hundreds of homes have been destroyed, but firefighters managed to save this one, raging fires getting less than a metre from its fence. A fire as it encroaches onto a...
So I'm just going to skip through this one because, again, it is 13 minutes long, and then there's one in my recommends that I just want to click on because, again, there's still a lot to go through.
Highway. Emergency responders pushed back by the sheer force of the blaze. This is its largest wildfire in modern history.
For all we know, this is the middle of the day. That smoke could be blackening out the sky.
Destroying nearly 200,000 acres. This morning, just 50 kilometres from the capital, Madrid, the scorched remains of Chapinera, a rural village that was evacuated on Friday. A new fire is now spreading near Valencia in the eastern Castellón province. It's already forced 16,000 people from their homes, with no word on when they'll be able to return or what they'll be returning to.
So yeah, this is daytime. That's the sun. Okay. So another heat wave is about to hit Europe.
We have
which will
high
only
pressure
make this
again
worse.
extending across the continent, bringing day after day of sunshine, rising temperatures and a lack of rainfall. And on top of that, by the middle of the week, southern and western parts of Europe will be very hot, temperatures widely in the mid to high 30s, in some places passing 40 degrees.
Just, I can't imagine what it must be like for a firefighter having to fight these fires in 40-degree weather while wearing all of that equipment with all of that heat radiating off from that fire. This is not a job just anyone can do, and that's part of the problem, because when it comes to like different types of search and rescue and this, you know, you can have volunteers, you can have just average people show up to help out. You need to be trained for this. You need to be physically able to do this. And so there's only a limited amount of people who can actually go out and fight these fires. And so what should be happening is the government should basically be having a program to train people into this. Like there should be schools set up on how to be a wildfire fighter, or just like a natural disaster response person. That's what we really need to be doing. You know, not military or anything of that sort, just, you know, people who are trained to respond to these things and put them through education and treat it like a full-time job for them, like a career in a way.
Which is exactly what you don't want to hear when you're fighting wildfires.
So how will that, you know, patch of deep orange and red affect us here?
Well,
Okay. A lot of corporate interests, yeah. So this is the video that I'm just seeing in the corner of my eye. Stop with your music. Fierce wildfires are raging less than 7 miles in the French city of Bordeaux and its airport. Yeah. If a fire gets that close to you, be prepared to run. Like, I already kind of have a vague idea of what I would get. So, like, of course, my cats. Probably my computers and my backup hard drives and stuff, because my artwork is on it. I have a lot of photos on it. My history, everything I need for my studio, so that I don't have to start from scratch. You know, documentations, all that sort of stuff. It's all on my computer, so that's probably what I'd be grabbing first. Other than my cats, and then, you know, Frodo's ashes, my grandmother's ashes, maybe different pieces of artwork. Like, it's just so many things that I've built up over my life would be gone, because there's no way that I could get everything here into my car. I'm terrified of that situation. So a simple guide to understanding climate change and wildfires. Let's just get down to here. So yes, the Barrascos wildfire was started by a van that caught fire. And that's, again, part of the problem with how these fires are spread, is that a cigarette butt tossed out the window can start a massive forest fire because the conditions are ripe for it. Whereas before, if it happened, nothing would happen. You know, a few ashes or embers from a fire land on wet grass, nothing happens. A cigarette flicked out the window onto damp soil, nothing happens. If a vehicle catches on fire near the woods, but again, we're in more damp conditions and stuff, it's just the vehicle, nothing else. But with the way things are, any fire will be a problem. And then that's also like, if there's electrical sparks, that's a problem. Lightning strikes, that's a problem. Because it's not like lightning strikes are new. A lot of these forest fires are being started by lightning strikes. They're not new. This has always been happening. But the conditions for the forest fires are new. The dried out conditions are new. And that's why we're seeing so many more than we would have just even 10 years ago. So that flame spread to the roadside vegetation before moving into the forest. That is a fact. What isn't true is the claim that this means climate change had nothing to do with it. Climate change didn't set the van on fire. It helped create the conditions that allowed a single vehicle fire to become a major wildfire. France is suffocating under intense reoccurring heat wave conditions. The Landes de Gascon forest has been turned into a tinderbox where a single ignition source was all it took for a disaster to unfold. The flames spread rapidly, burning thousands of hectares, forcing thousands of people to flee. Even pieces of glass that might be discarded but are at such an angle that it can cause the sun to reflect through it can start a fire. The van was the spark. The heat and dry conditions were the fuel. Hotter, drier landscapes mean fires spread faster and burn harder and become far more destructive. Yeah. stop staring at the match and start looking at why it was able to become such a disaster. So that's the van there, which led to a devastating fire. And then in situations like this, they would probably want to blame the van driver. Again, this is almost like, unless you have somebody out there intentionally setting fires, and remember like a year ago, there were those conspiracy theories that this was some sort of plot to start fires and all that sort of bullshit. Humans should be allowed to make mistakes, have accidents, without it turning into a fire that levels an entire neighborhood. So here we have horrific conditions in Spain yesterday with fierce winds driving smoke, embers through the area. And we saw a bit of this in one of the news clips that we watched. Just again, the fires will cause these types of systems, weather systems, to happen, just making it worse. A massive wildfire broke out yesterday in Italy, tearing through pine forests along the northern coastline. Driven by strong winds, the fire spread rapidly between coastal areas, forcing the evacuation of beaches in nearby residential areas. Again, a lot of people might think, oh, we'll just run to the water to protect ourselves, to get away from these flames, just run to the water. If the wind changes and the smoke starts going over the water, you have nowhere to breathe. Here's the flames. Here's a building. They're taller than the buildings around them. So somebody just saying massive wildfires are tearing through an Italian island of Sicily as other fires rage across Europe. Yeah, and it is climate change. Just, again, horrifying, horrifying. If you're trapped in the middle of that, there's no way out. Kind of like one time I remember sitting around a campfire in somebody's backyard. And I remember I saw a spider on the log in there that must have been tossed in. And the spider was running around trying to get away from the flame, but it didn't realize there was no way out. If you're in the middle of this, it doesn't matter where you run. There's no way out. All you can do is pray, if that's something you believe in, that your little piece of land will survive. We won't be watching this whole video because it is like 8 minutes long, but I'll just skip through it. When you're told to evacuate, the speed of this forest fire in Spain is terrifying. It took 8 minutes to reach the camera. So here you can see it way off in the distance. Let's make this bigger. That's at 1.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes. Just over 3 minutes. 4.5 minutes. Oh, you can see some of the fire funnels happening. And you can hear the wind starting to pick up. 5 minutes. 5.5. Just over 6. The flame is starting to pop up right here. Wow, that was fast. So I'll just let it play out from here. And you can see the wind is really pushing it too. So here we are here. That's where it started. Just 8 minutes. Oh, scary, scary, scary. And then the next one, it's kind of devastating. It's not just humans affected. It's also animals. So this account is saying it's atrocious, atrocious. Thanks to the wildlife photographer for showing us these images. So livestock, animals, pets, wildlife, they just panic. They don't know where to go. A deer will just run through this, not knowing where to go. In Australia in particular, they said, I don't know if it was 1 billion or several billion, but it was like 1 billion at a minimum. Animals died in one of their wildfire seasons. Koalas were almost wiped out because koalas live in trees and they will flee up trees when they're in danger. And there's lots of animals that do that. They do that, they die. Okay, let's go back to the main shot. Okay, so we'll be moving on to the next docket about federal stuff. First, we'll check the SandBox. The Wild West, yeah, we should train the military for that instead of blowing up babies. I agree. I guess I jump in the river, there's nowhere else to go, and I don't have a car. Yeah, like I said, you still run the risk, but that's better than nowhere. You know, you have to go where you can go, and if that's your only option, you do what you have to do. Philip, this is why I'm against wildfires, because I'm claustrophobic. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Well, why don't we just keep on going, getting through this. So getting on to some federal news. Close that window now. Mark Kearney. This morning I met with federal workers in Ottawa who are supporting the wildfire response efforts in northwestern Ontario and across the country. This is one of the most intense wildfire seasons in Canadian history due to extreme heat waves and record-breaking dry conditions. Is that what they're due from? What's causing the extreme heat waves and the record-breaking dry conditions, Mark? What's causing that, Mark? Canada is mobilizing more than 5,000 firefighters and nearly 300 water bombers, helicopters, and evacuation aircraft and to contain, control, and mitigate the fires. Yeah, try telling that to the First Nations you abandoned. Didn't even warn. We'll be getting more into that with Ontario. It's an enormous, complex effort that ultimately depends on the dedicated and brave individuals who work relentlessly to keep everyone safe. Oh, here he is looking very stern and yeah, Ooh, pointing at a screen with the backlight. Uh-huh. Yep. Concerned look. I think the Scottish guy had a better beard. Yeah. What's causing the heat waves and the dry conditions, Mark? You could just come out and say it. Oh, but you can't, right? Because, you know, the whole must have oil, the whole right before Canada Day saying that, you know what, the climate targets of Justin Trudeau, we're just not going to meet them either because, you know, he was expressing it as these climate goals were short-term pain type thing. Like they were just short-term goals. But the economy was more important than these short-term goals of hitting climate markers. Well, we won't be able to hit any climate markers in the future when we don't have any civilization left. So more from Mark Carney because I imagine he's getting a lot of heat, so to speak. Hello, Looney Tunes. Unofficial Surfs Raid. Well, welcome anyone who's jumping over here. This whole live stream is just about wildfires. You can go back to the beginning to learn how big a hectare is. So more from Mark Carney. Today I convened an incident response group to discuss the escalating wildfire situation across our country, as extreme heat waves and record-breaking dry conditions are creating one of the most intense wildfire seasons in Canadian history. That's kind of like saying, you know, the person who died in the car is because the impact of their skull against the windshield, without saying what caused the car to get in the accident in the first place. Yeah, you might want to say the CC, you know, climate change. That's what's causing the dry conditions and the heat waves, is the climate change. These are just a secondary expression of that, symptom of that. We are mobilizing more than 5,300 firefighters, and yeah, he said that already. Our government will continue to work closely with provincial, territorial, and Indigenous partners, to support affected communities and deploy every resource needed to keep Canadians safe. Yeah, try telling that to the First Nations of Collins, that you won't even recognize. Even though they're all First Nations, you won't recognize that community as a First Nations community, which would mean that they would get extra funding and all that sort of stuff. Nope. Totally abandoned them. Mark Carney is racist, in my opinion. So here he is talking about it with the president, or he mentioned his conversation with Trump, because Trump is mad. He's so mad that all the smoke is coming down from Canada. I have no doubt Trump probably thinks that we can put up some sort of screen to catch the smoke before it gets into the United States, and that the fact that we're not doing that is because we don't like him, and so he started the tariffs.
I had a series of conversations with the President of the United States over
the same way people are having series of conversations with Mitch McConnell, I'm sure.
The weekend on wildfires made very clear both the scale of the issue, the scale of the forest that Canada is blessed with, 8 times the size of Texas, the fact that we have effectively a drought, conditions that have extend...
What's causing the fucking drought, Mark? I'm swearing again.
From the equivalent of Texas all the way to Minnesota, to put it in American terms.
Yeah. What's the reason for the drought? Well, here's some of the core reasons here. So this person just tweeting out saying, this is the road we are on. The companies that cause the climate crisis are getting rich as they fuel the fire. ExxonMobil, over $55 billion. Shell, almost 40 billion. Chevron, 35 billion. BP, almost 30 billion. Yeah, they're getting their money, at least. The oil companies. This town is burning. You're driving down a hellscape. This could be noon for all you know. Uh-huh. But you know, the oil companies, they're the important ones. Well, according to Mark Carney, yeah, they are. Because here we go. This is what Mark Carney invests in. He's willing to dredge up this entire area, destroy the ecosystem here, so that oil tankers can fill up more. So it's not that we can't mobilize enough people, do infrastructure, all that sort of stuff. It's that the priority is to spend that money and resources on oil companies and the military.
On Memorial, the Tsleil-Waututh Nation has called this area home.
I might have been listening to that, but fast.
They say when the tide is out, the table is set because of the bountiful seafood available to be harvested. However, over the years, the community has had industry move in, and with that meant impacts to the environment. Leah George Wilson says the federal government has recently approved a permit to the Port of Vancouver to dredge parts of the Burrard Inlet to allow more shipping capacity of bitumen oil. 1 million barrels of bitumen is currently pumped through the Trans Mountain Pipeline from Alberta to the Westridge dock here in Burnaby daily.
The dredging, the permit has been approved. We have filed a judicial review, and that just means we're asking the court to review the decision to make sure that the permitter considered everything or made the right decision.
George Wilson says her community has serious concerns about the long-term impacts of the dredging.
It will increase the depth because these tankers only fill up to like 80%, and they want them to fill up to 100%. So then they would go deeper in the water, which is why they need the dredging. But with the deeper dredge, it means when the water comes in, it's going to make it run faster because the channel will be narrow. So it'll come out like this, and erosion will occur more than is occurring now.
George Wilson says the community was consulted, but the permit was approved regardless of their concerns.
Yeah, that's the whole, oh, we promised to consult First Nations with every project. But what they're neglecting to mention is that they'll say, we'll consult them, but we're not going to listen to them. We've already made up our mind. We just need to check that box that say we talk to them. You know, they're not influencing us whatsoever. We're already going to do what we're going to do. But we did consult them.
And on the top of their concerns is an increase in oil shipments means an increase in the potential for an oil spill.
It's not going to be if, it's going to be when. And we already know that the oil clean response isn't as good as governments want it to be. And an oil spill will impact the fish. Herring just came back a few years ago. It will impact additional tankers, will impact the southern resident killer whale, which is protected by the Species at Risk Act, which is a federal piece of legislation.
Which Bill 5 overrides? So they can kill them?
The dredging permit was issued on June the 23rd, 2026, and is expected to begin August the 16th until February the 28th, 2027.
Okay. Well, here we have Avi Lewis, who actually uses the words like climate change and all that sort of stuff and is willing to call it what it is. So here he says in this photograph, Carney is touring the government operations centers, the nerve center that leads to the integrated federal response to all hazard events of national interest. The workforce there has been cut in half thanks to Carney's public service cuts from 100 to just 50 workers. In other words, to advance major projects in the national interest, like pipelines and military hardware, the PM has slashed the number of public sector workers who coordinate the response to emergencies of a national interest. As Sharon says, gutted it by almost half puts people across the country at risk, including frontline workers who are battling wildfires, supporting evacuations, and risking their lives. Yeah, Mark Carney can find all this money to throw into the military, to throw into pipelines, to throw into data centers. But when it comes to this sort of public sector work, things that would keep us safe, suddenly the money isn't there. That's what's being cut. You know, how about we cut every future data center from being built? Imagine the amount of money we would save. Imagine if we didn't make any more pipelines, how much money we'd save. Or if we didn't buy any more jets or submarines or war machines. We'd have so much more money to invest in this type of thing. So this is the article here. Carney government cut nearly half the jobs at Nerve Center for managing wildfires, the union says. Before discussing smoke with U.S. President Donald Trump, the World Cup final on Sunday, July 19th, Carney posted photos on social media. Yeah. Let's see. With Trump threatening new tariffs on Canada over smoke that blanketed much of the northeastern United States last week, Carney highlighted the government's effort to coordinate the response to one of the most intense wildfire seasons in Canadian history. But under the Carney's government plan to reduce the size of public service, the center featured in the post had lost about 50 positions, or nearly half its workforce, according to Canada's largest public sector union. So if we go back, that's this right here. He fired half of their co-workers. The Government Operations Center, GOC, is responsible for coordinating national emergency response. And then I just read that quote. Anyway, I'll toss this link into the sandbox so that if you want to finish reading it, you can. There you go. We still have more to get to. So here we have from APTN, Indigenous Service Canada says it will provide support after wildfires destroyed 2 First Nation communities. All the money in the world for pipelines to dredge up an entire strait, but to help First Nation communities that were destroyed by wildfires, do we have the money?
Their response last week when I asked about Collins First Nation in particular, the members are status First Nations people. The community isn't recognized as a First Nation itself. Indigenous Services told me that they were going to be receiving federal supports, including from Indigenous Services Canada, but they didn't tell me anything else about what those supports would actually entail. Specifically, if there's going to be money for rebuilding, what evacuation services they're providing for these members. I checked in again this week and there was no update on that either. I was told the previous statement stood. So there's still no information if they're helping this community rebuild or any sort of plan about getting them home. Their response last week.
So that is part of a larger YouTube video or a longer YouTube video that I will toss into the sandbox for you right now. There you go. And one last thing on this docket. So again, we could have a prime minister that calls it for what it is and actually has a plan. We could have Avi Lewis as prime minister. So he says wildfires are getting more and more devastating because of global warming, which is primarily caused by the burning of fossil fuels. Trump won't say that because he's in the industry pockets. If he wants compensation for wildfire smoke, he should go after the oil and gas giants responsible. Yes. No more pipelines, nothing. And actually, yeah, let's start charging all these oil companies for the destruction they have wrought.
I would like to express my condolences to the American people today. Your president is like an old man shaking his fist and screaming up at smoke from a fire that he is responsible for lighting, or at least
he likes that so much. Yeah. He likes that little shaking fist thing so much he actually repeats it later on. Kind of cute, but not really.
He's pouring gasoline onto. But I think it's important to get back to the basics, because apparently we have to remind everyone of these facts. Wildfires are getting more and more devastating because they're being turbocharged by global warming. Global warming is being caused primarily by the burning of fossil fuels. If carbon dioxide was visible like smoke, you'd see the biggest single cloud in history that's drifted out of the United States. And that's the responsibility of big oil, headquartered in the United States and elsewhere. According to the Carbon Majors database, Exxon and Chevron are both in the top 5 greenhouse gas emitters of all time. Trump doesn't talk about that. After all, the fossil fuel industry contributed almost $100 million to his reelection campaign, $500 million spent by big oil in the last election cycle alone. If President Trump wants compensation for the harms that these fires are causing, how about an excess profit tax on big oil that made $30 million an hour in excess profits in the first month of the illegal war on Iran?
Oh, he's even tying this into the wars. Good.
I would like to express my condolences to the American people today. Your president is like an old man shaking his fist and screaming up at smoke from a fire that he is responsible for lighting or at least pouring gasoline onto.
You believe that the President of the United States has some responsibility over the situation that's unfolding now in Canada?
There's no question. We've had 3 of the biggest heat waves in European history, with something like 25,000 excess deaths in Europe so far this summer. We're still in midsummer. This is a global phenomenon. It's called global warming, which is turbocharging these devastating fires. And the way to deal with it is to reduce our dependence on oil and gas, which the president does not want to talk about it because he's soaked in it.
And we could have him as prime minister. Oh, no, I can't close those tabs. I'll need them for my cataloging after this. Okay, let's get the next one up on screen. Oh, there we go. Talking provincial ones next. Okay. But first, go and check the SandBox. Oh, I'm super hungry right now, and a turkey sandwich sounds like it would be amazing, even if it's mouth hurty. Let's see. Hello, Crotchy. It's been a while. Just dropped in to say I think conservative Carney asked Trump to threaten Canada with tariffs anytime Carney needs to get out of taxing the wealthy or needs a distraction to do favors for elite. Not a bad theory. I wouldn't rule that out. Boku, with the price of one F-35, we could pay for R&D for the first purpose-built air tanker for the National Fire Service and build a fleet of 20-ish. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just... if we actually spent taxpayer money the way that the taxpayers want it spent, our life would be so much better right now. This is, when I was a kid, this is not the future I envisioned. I thought things would be getting better, not worse. And even worse, like I wasn't expecting, like world ending worse. It's just, it's unconscionable that the world has gone this way. That the population has allowed a tiny percentage of ultra wealthy to destroy the planet, like literally destroy it. Because, people will always say like, ooh, communism, it caused this many deaths back then. And, oh, there was this famine and blah, blah, blah. So we can't do communism, whatever. Capitalism is going to kill billions. No joke. It's going to kill billions. We need a different system. We need a different system than what we currently have, because this neoliberal, whatever you want to call it, capitalistic, Epstein elites, they're going to kill billions. Apparently an unofficial raid from Difficult Truth. Welcome. Hello, John Glad. Nice to see you in the SandBox. Okay, let's just move along. Where's my mouse? Here it is. So here we have something from CTV News. So I'm moving over into provincial ones. We'll start with BC because they're also battling with a lot of wildfires right now.
The merger of these two fires has created quite a complex situation for the crews that are in the area. What we do know is that over the weekend we did have those cooler temperatures that limited the fire activity in that Clinton area, but officials are worried that with the coming days ahead that the temperatures will increase and expand the current fires that are burning in the area. So we know that the Pear Lake and the 59 Creek wildfires merged Saturday evening, creating a single fire that now covers nearly 670 square kilometers as part of the Big Bar complex. The entire village of Clinton remains under evacuation order after several homes were destroyed Friday. Crews were able to prevent any additional structural losses on Sunday, but the fire continues to threaten the community. Meanwhile, there are around 140 wildfires burning across British Columbia right now, including the Brunswick complex and the Fraser Canyon, where evacuation orders remain in effect for Boston Bar and the surrounding area. The merger of these two fires has created...
So let's just... Again, it's hard to comprehend how big these fires are, but I'm fairly certain you could be on like the 5th floor of a building and be roasting marshmallows on these. Like, these flames are just so massive. Like, we don't have the ability to comprehend how tall these flames are because all the fires that we're used to seeing are, you know, campfires or a little bushfire or something. You know, we're not used to seeing flames that can encompass an entire apartment complex. That's how tall they are to begin with. Hermeteorologist, my sister lives there. 40 minutes from here. I hope everyone stays safe. But more on the BC fires. And this is from 2 hours ago, or be like 3 hours now.
The wildfire situation in BC remains highly active this morning, with 139 fires burning across the province. One of the biggest concerns is in the South Caribou, where 2 major wildfires merged over the weekend, creating a massive fire that continues to threaten the village of Clinton. CTV's Craig Krause joins us live this morning. Good morning, Craig. So how are crews trying to keep this fire from spreading any further?
Well, good morning, Carrie. So crews did get some help from the weather over the weekend. We know that there's been cooler temperatures around that area over the last 48 hours, which help reduce the fire activity in those affected areas. But officials are worried that's going to be short-lived with some warm temperatures on the horizon here this week. So let's get into some information that we have received over the last few hours here about the fires that are burning. So we have the Pear Lake and the 59 Creek wildfires that have merged, and that happened on Saturday evening, forming a single fire that now covers nearly 670 square kilometers as part of the Big Bar complex. The entire village of Clinton remains under evacuation order.
I really want somebody to do that graph that I was talking about, where they map out how big these fires are, put them all together, and then start putting them over places of the global map so that we can see just how big these are, because it's like, just said over 600 kilometers, and I'm about 100 kilometers from Toronto, so I can visualize 100 kilometers. Like, if you're driving your car, if you're doing the speed limit, that's a 6-hour drive.
After several homes were destroyed Friday, while crews were able to prevent any additional structural losses over the weekend, officials say the threat to the community remains significant.
I know BC Wildfire, our fire department, and the other auxiliary departments that are in to help and do structural protection are going to have their work cut out for them over the next few days to make sure that fire doesn't continue to damage buildings in Clinton.
The wildfire emergency extends well beyond Clinton, though. More than 139 wildfires are burning across BC, including the Brunswick complex and the Fraser Canyon, where evacuation orders remain in place for Boston Bar and surrounding communities. Officials say additional firefighters from Yukon and Alberta are expected to arrive this week, with more than 100 personnel from Mexico set to join the response after the BC day-long weekend. And again, with these hot and dry conditions that are expected later on this week, we are expected for crews to be trying to corral these fires that are burning out of control. As I mentioned, 139 wildfires are currently burning.
I think, yeah, this one here is This clip from CBC News is from an hour and a half ago. Just click on this.
The wildfire situation in British Columbia intensified over the weekend. Nearly 140 fires are now burning in the province. Dozens of evacuation orders and alerts are in place, affecting hundreds of people. For more, let's bring in the CBC's Brady Strawn. He joins us now from Kelowna. So Brady, what's the latest?
Hi, Andrew. Yeah, hot, dry conditions here in the interior. And of course, we hear about these evacuations in the Clinton area. This is on top of the community of Boston Bar in the Fraser Canyon.
Okay.
I told my wife, I called her, said, Andrew.
Okay, let's keep moving along. So from CTV News, Mooseland Road firefighting efforts paused due to heavy rain, road closures removed. So even with heavy rain, that doesn't help. And this is in Nova Scotia. So Nova Scotia was having some wildfires. It seems to be, they seem to be out of danger, but the problem is that a lot of our land is super, super dry. So when we get a sudden downpour, it doesn't get absorbed into the ground. It just runs off. So it doesn't really help. It could help like in a moment to maybe help get some fires down. But a few days later, it's just as dry as it was before. And then also this pollutes the rivers and the lakes and stuff with all the ash that's getting put into it. It's just, you can see a lot of mudslides and whatnot after a fire has ripped through some place because the vegetation that would normally hold the soil in place is gone. Floods are more likely to happen too because, again, the runoff just all funnels together. It's, yeah. So crews are taking a day off from fighting a wildfire on Nova Scotia's eastern shore due to heavy rain in the area. The wildfire in Jacket Lake area was first reported last Wednesday. It grew to 1,447 hectares and was announced as being held on Sunday. A mandatory evacuation order put in place by Halifax Regional Municipality was also lifted. The Department of Natural Resources said the fire remains an estimated 1,447 hectares and is still being held. Heavy rain is affecting the wildfire area today and possibly tomorrow, it said in a Wednesday morning social media post. To keep crews safe, wildfire suppression work is paused today, but staff will continuously monitor the fire. So just a little bit updated there. But here we get into Ontario. And Ontario, Ontario's been hit really, really bad. And so here we have an article just saying update on Thunder Bay. 36th largest wildfire in Ontario history by far. This is the worst wildfire season in Ontario's history by a very large margin. Doug Ford is responsible for a lot of this. Did he cause climate change? No. But he underfunded the wildfire fighting abilities. He underfunded it drastically. Some of these could have been stopped before they became so big. He's absolutely at fault. And again, some of the First Nations, they weren't even warned properly to leave. They had an hour's notice to evacuate, some of them having to evacuate by boat because no roads go to that community. Again, part of the reason why it's so hard to fight these fires is getting to them in the first place. So the forest fire is measured at over 315,000 hectares, making it far larger than last year's almost 200,000 hectare Red Lake. There is no end in sight to White Sand First Nations evacuation, Chief Lawrence said Thursday. I'm going to have to skip over a lot of names here. I'm sorry. But we'll see it next week, he told Newswatch. At First Nations member continued to shelter in a Southside Thunder Bay hotel. The chief said he heard earlier this week from band members who are still on the reserve next to Armstrong, and they are still and said all buildings there are still standing. White Sand and Armstrong are about 220 kilometers north of the city, evacuated last week as raging forest fire neared the communities. The blaze, which has merged with other wildfires, is now labeled Thunder Bay 36, remains out of control and spans over 315,000 hectares. Sorry, I'm just going to bring this up again. I didn't close it. Hectare, here. I was showing this at the beginning so people could kind of get an idea of how big a hectare is. A hectare is 100 meters by 100 meters, which makes it 10,000 square meters. This sports field is a little over a hectare in size. Trafalgar Square has an area of about 1 hectare. 1 hectare is, let's see. Yeah, so you can see the imperial measurements here. Over 100,000 square feet. So again, it's easier because most people can visualize a sports field. Over 300,000 of those. That's how big that fire is. So over 315,000 hectares, making it not just the largest wildfire of the 2026 season, but the largest ever recorded in Ontario. The mega blaze measured at over 318,000 hectares Wednesday evening, but was remapped for accuracy at 315,000 hectares the next day. That far exceeds the previous provincial record of almost 200,000 hectares set by last year's Red Lake 12 wildland fire. Ministry of Natural Resources Fire Information Officer Karen told Newswatch in an email Wednesday evening that recent rainfall resulted in a reduction in fire behavior for Thunder Bay 36, and there has been no significant growth in the last 5 days. It's pretty much the only way that we can get some of these fires under control is intervention by Mother Nature. Rainfall. That's the only way. I'll toss this into the sandbox if you want to finish reading up on this article. There's still a bunch I want to get to. Hello, Atticus among us. Welcome to the sandbox. Philip Blair saying 100 kilometers is about 60 miles. Yeah, so imagine 60 by 60 square miles. So here we have an article from the Norwal. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. It's a really long article, but it's a good one. First Nations had a wildfire plan. Ontario ignored it. Then came the flames. Premier Doug Ford was presented with dozens of recommendations to improve emergency response in Northern Ontario. Little progress was made before what is now estimated to be the province's worst wildfire season on record. In the summer of 2021, in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic, Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler of this nation personally presented Ontario Premier Doug Ford with 82-page plan to support the Northern Ontario during emergencies like wildfires. The organization that represents 51 Northern Ontario First Nations had developed the plan in response to a series of disasters between 2009 and 2019, both from flooding and wildfires, which are laid out across 27 pages. But those past disasters are nowhere near the scale seen this summer alone, with Northern Ontario dealing with what's now estimated to be the worst wildfire season on record. We're only halfway through. You know, we still have August and September to get through. The framework identified a series of deficiencies and gaps in emergency management for First Nation communities. They include a lack of clear roles for the federal and provincial governments. Both the federal and provincial governments absolutely failed the First Nation communities here. Both of them ignored them. Both of them did nothing to help. And both of them are doing nothing to help after the fact either. So in the event of disaster, a clear lack of recognition of unique challenges facing remote Indigenous communities, many of which are not incorporated like a municipality and are hard to access. A lack of pre-disaster resources and funding for both impacted communities and host communities for evacuees, and no legal framework giving First Nations emergency powers to persuade the province to take action. The plan includes 20 recommendations, without which the need for robust and comprehensive First Nation emergency management will continually increase. That was 5 years ago, Fiddler told the Norwell. There's been no response. Everything that was highlighted in the report, Fiddler said, is coming to a head today in Northern Ontario. In the span of 11 days, 2 communities, Wallens and Whitewater Lake First Nations, have entirely burned down. The last government count, around 1,800 people, have been evacuated, though local emergency officials believe this number may be low, as they say there is no coherent government-led system to support or track evacuations in remote Indigenous communities. At least 13 other communities are under evacuation orders, 8 of which are First Nations, according to Chiefs of Ontario. As publication time, there remains more than 170 active wildfires per Ontario's Ministry of Natural Resources in Northern Ontario. This season's 562 fires versus 371 last year and 358 10-year average have already burned down an area almost as large as the Greater Toronto Area, which last week had some of the worst air quality in the world because of the wildfire smoke. There is about 3 million people living in the Greater Toronto Area. That's how big it is. The fires are behaving differently than what we're used to, Sharon Bach, an emergency responder based in Thunder Bay with 30 years of experience, including at the provincial level, told the Norwell there have been more hold my breath moments than I'm used to. Weather projections started looking deadly on July 12th, with Thunder Bay heading into a week of record heat, and in some places surpassing 40 degrees C. And so again, for the Americans, that's in the 110s Fahrenheit. Low humidity combined with bone-dry conditions across northern Ontario, boreal forests, plus a major lightning event and windy conditions the week before made for dangerous combination. The signs were all there, Bach said. This wasn't the norm, she added. With Northern Ontario fires, we're prepared. We expect them, but this isn't the norm. We've had fires that are close to critical infrastructure in areas where people live. We've had fires going one way that changed directions overnight to get closer to communities, and fires joining together. That's some pretty huge red flags that a lot is going on that needs to be monitored, she said. The question is, who's watching the clock? Again, this is a long article, so there's been limited capacity in the system for a long time, for government hasn't fully implemented Auditor General recommendations. This pattern of failed communication, lackluster response, and poor planning has been a feature of Ontario's emergency response system for over 2 decades, and all the gaps show this time, Bach said. So we'll continue down. Emergency response in First Nation continues to be broken. Ontario's emergency response also depends on federal funding, an agreement which assumes provinces have a robust system they can use to respond to disaster scenarios. In other words, Ottawa funds emergency response to First Nations, but Ontario controls the decisions about how that response gets executed. Important information there. Fiddler believes part of why the system is broken is because the First Nations are not at the table making those decisions. As outlined outlined in this nation's report, Ontario's entire emergency management system is built for municipalities, and First Nations don't fit that model, legally, financially, or structurally. To start, First Nations' declaration of emergency has no impact on the political system. It doesn't unlock funding or resources or force higher levels of government into action. Financially, there's not enough money being spent in the right places. The plan notes, using federal data from 2012 to 2016, it shows Ontario received 31% of all national emergency management funding for First Nations, with the vast majority going to response and recovery, not prevention or mitigation. Meanwhile, the government has consistently under-budgeted for fire response. In the 2025 budget, the Ford government allotted $135 million for its emergency forest firing fund, but ended up spending double that at $271 million. So, tossing this into the sandbox. There you go. So the Norwal is another good resource for Canadian progressive news. So, but Doug Ford here, despite everything we just learned from this article and this article, Doug Ford here is saying, when lives are on the line, the cost doesn't matter. We'll do and spend whatever it takes to protect people from these devastating wildfires. Define what you mean by everything. I guess in his case, define who you consider to be a person.
If it's $500 million this year, so be it. I've made clear direction to our ministers. I don't care what this costs. Number one, our priority is to protect the people. If it's 500,
yeah. Prevention. That's a good way to protect people. So Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Ontario Greens, is saying Doug Ford says he'll not spare a penny fighting wildfires, but firefighters have been warning his government for 10 years about being underprepared, and we keep losing them because he won't fix it. That's not doing everything we can. That's ignoring the people who actually fight the fires and putting Ontarian lives at risk. Yes, it's better to, again, preventative. It's kind of like somebody can arrive in the hospital with a heart attack and need a bypass, whereas if they have done preventative care ahead of time, they wouldn't have to wait until that person's almost dead. So this is the article that Mike was referring to. So Ontario forest fighters warned for years about retention pay issues. So Ford will do everything except pay firefighters and retain them.
My mom and her belongings in here too.
An evacuation alert has forced Carolyn Martins to pack up her BC home as out-of-control wildfires close in.
We had ash falling on us today, and that's kind of...
Is this, oh, this is Ontario wildfire burns as Trump renews smoke complaints.
kind of worried me at that time, because that's usually the number one sign you got to get ready.
Nearly 1,000 wildfires are burning across the country, and the situation has only gotten worse in the last few days, especially in Ontario.
The fire is expanding from 650,000 hectares up to 735,000 hectares, so it's moving quickly.
Smoke is choking some Canadian and American cities, irritating the U.S. president so much that he raised the issue directly with the Prime Minister on Sunday at the World Cup final.
I told him, you got to stop these fires from coming in and, poisoning our air.
Several U.S. wildfires have caused air quality warnings in southeast BC, according to provincial officials. But that seemingly not a concern for Donald Trump, who is once again threatening Canada with economic consequences.
I have a good relationship with Mark Carney, but, we got to stop the fires up there. If we can help them, we'll help them.
He's not going to help. He's not going to send in resources or firefighters or planes or anything to help. He's just going to stand there and bitch.
But maybe they should pay us some damages or something, or we should do some...
How about the United States pays Canada for all the damages they've caused us? How about that?
Tariffs?
I get frustrated just listening that bunch of rubbish.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford pointing to Canadian Armed Forces personnel helping to save Minnesotans from an ongoing wildfire as an example for the president.
Maybe President Trump would offer his closest allies and friends some support rather than sit there and threaten tariffs.
Global.
We're not friends, Dougie. That's the problem. So it was more than a decade ago Ontario government started to worry about its wildland firefighting program. Back in 2016, a report warned that fire rangers were quitting at an alarming rate, were less experienced than in previous years, and were comparatively underpaid. Those issues have persisted ever since. Versions of the report repeated the warnings in 2018 and 2019, when an internal memo from 2022 warned of an increase in the number of people leaving our organization for employment opportunities elsewhere. In the last few years, several firefighters and the union representing them have pushed the issue again, urgently arguing that without change, Ontario will be caught short when big fires hit. The Ontario Public Service Employee Union has pushed for major pay increases to reclassify wildland firefighters as firefighters, not resource technicians, and more year-round jobs. Yeah, a lot of what's happening, Doug Ford's fault. As the province faced a record-breaking fire season with thousands of people evacuated and hundreds of thousands of hectares burned, frustration is growing within the Wildland Fire Service. Some feel that years of warnings have been ignored. They have. There's a big difference in making emergency dollars available when you have no choice. But to do that, what about the preparedness dollars that are needed before the fire season even starts? One senior retired wildland firefighter told Global News. The former official was granted anonymity to speak openly about the province's response. The preparedness money is needed to make sure that you have the 200 fire crew annually budgeted for instead of only the 150 that they currently have in place, that you have enough pilots and engineers in place so that you can fly and maintain, this is important here, maintain your firefighting aircraft so you can have all of your equipment serviceable and ready to be deployed when needed, they added. Now, why am I highlighting that? Well, that's because of this. Ontario grounds 2 water bombers for repairs as wildfires rage through. 2 of Ontario's 9 water bombers are grounded for repairs as the province calls in help from across the country to battle for control of nearly 200 wildfires ripping through the north. Questions from opponents and experts have lingered through the fire season about how many planes Ontario has from its own fleet available to fight, with questions and concerns about crewing and mechanical readiness. The Ministry of Natural Resources indicated to Global News that 2 of its water bombers were grounded for repairs, but said there were no issues with staffing its fleet, claiming the rest of the planes are in use. Yeah. That's Doug Ford there sparing no expense to keep people safe. Also, Ontario firefighters battling record wildfires, 34 crews short of approved staffing levels, union says. So what was that? Oh yeah, we have enough staff, only no we don't. Union figures suggest wildfire program running below full staffing complement. Ford government says it has increased resources. And this is from the Trillium. As Ontario barrels through what's projected to be the worst wildfire season on record, internal union figures shared with the Trillium suggest the province is operating well below its approved wildfire crew complement. The latest figures from UpScrolled, the union representing wildland firefighters, show the province's approved complement is 190 crews, but only 156 are currently operating, leaving the province 34 crews short. The staffing gap is not in dispute. The program does not currently have enough complete available crews to meet its own approved based allocation, Jeremy Rouse, OPSU chair of the Ministry of Employee Relations Committee for the said. The Ford government disputes the 190 crew benchmark, saying it's not a current target, though it has had 190 crews in previous years. Ontario does not have target numbers of crews. If needed, additional capacity can be supplemented through establishment, mutual aid, and contracts operation levels evolve. Emily McLaughlin, a spokesperson for the ministry, said in a statement, "Our government is sparing no expense to support those on the front lines of fire response. We have added an additional 170 permanent fire personnel positions since 2024, including leader roles. We've also increased compensation for our critical roles, like heroic firefighters and pilots." Anyway, into the SandBox with this article. Moving on. Tina Yazdani. She's so good. I'm so glad that she's still a reporter and can really get under the skin of Doug Ford. So she says, as wildfires become more frequent and intense, I asked Premier Ford why Ontario still relies on seasonal firefighters instead of a year-round workforce. Ford says the province is ramping it up with new hires. Watch the exchange. We shall.
Just going back to the staffing issue, given that these wildfires appear to they're more frequent, they're more intense, why not move Ontario to a year-round model where you have permanent staff as opposed to relying on seasonal staff and kind of catching up after the fact?
Well, before I pass to the minister, as he said, we hired 100 last year, another 68 this year, so we're ramping it up. But over to you, Minister.
Mm-hmm. And I don't really want to say anything more, so I'm just going to toss it off to the minister here.
Good question. Something we've talked about for years now. We actually just reclassified again our crew.
I love it. We've talked about it for years. We've talked about it. Yeah, we've done a lot of talking. Mm-hmm.
Leaders, some of those senior leadership as full-time year-round staff now, which was very important. When we look at we'll just say that the general sort of wildland firefighter, a lot of them are students. They go to school through the winter. There's a lot of folks who also have other things that they do. I don't want to say on the side, but it's not as easy as just saying we're going to be a full-time force, because the folks who are actually out there doing the work are often doing some other things during the sort of the off season, if you want to call it that. So what we've tried to do is
soon there will be no off season.
Look at those people in those senior leadership positions, make sure that we're able to retain those staff. They're extremely, extremely important to us. We heard from them that was a big piece. So we've been able to do that. We did that last year. So there's a lot of good things happening on that front.
You didn't, though. That's the thing. You didn't. And so here's Jill Dunlop. She is the Ontario Minister of Energy Preparedness and Response. MPP for Simcoe North. So she's in charge of a lot of this. And she sent out a statement. Our government is advocating the Northern Shield Energy Corridor to connect Alberta oil sands with Sarnia's world-class. Wait a second. This isn't about the fires. This isn't about my talking about, how we're going to help people through this. This is talking about how are we going to make it worse. It's like Mark Carney breaking about the oil pipelines. This is about how we're going to make it worse, not about how we're going to help. Built with Ontario Steel and Ontario workers, this nation-building project would expand Sarnia's refinery capacity, create good-paying jobs, and help build a more self-reliant energy supply chain. Plus, no roads to First Nation communities. Yeah, that's what she's tweeting about. When maybe this is July 22nd. Yeah, right when the wildfires were happening. Okay. So she got questioned on this. So John here was just tweeting out, wow, staff for Ontario's emergency measures minister Jill Dunlop just audibly jumped in on air and pulled out of a CBC As It Happens interview on forest fires response. This goes to the whole thing. It's really long, but here's the clip of Minister Dunlop just being like, oh, we gotta go now. You're asking questions I don't want to answer.
Where they're going at that time and make all the arrangements around.
So this is Minister Dunlop right now speaking.
where they're going at that time and make all the arrangements around that. So we're not leaving that to the very end with those communities. We prepare them in advance for that.
Hey there, let's just wrap it up now, if that's okay.
Well, that's a staffer cutting in to say, can we just wrap it up? Who's literally just butted in on the phone.
Advance for that.
Hey there, let's just wrap it up now, if that's okay.
Well, we still have a few more questions. We weren't given a hard time. I'm sorry, I'm not sure who that is on the line. I have a couple more questions to ask, but we'll be done within 10 minutes, if that's all right, within 3 more minutes.
No, it's been 8 minutes. Thank you so much for your questions.
Why would the minister not want to answer the questions of her constituents?
She has, and
well, we have a couple more questions.
Your cooperation.
There's many more questions to ask.
Bye-bye.
Where they're going at that time.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Oh, that's not a good look. That's not a good look. They're ready to spend anything and do anything, but won't answer questions or pay for staff. So here, because of the disaster this has already been, First Nation leaders demand public inquiry into Ontario wildfire response.
Ministers from the provincial government are reacting to the accusations made at a press conference yesterday from First Nation chiefs in northwestern Ontario affected by wildfires. The chiefs say the government has not been in regular contact with their leadership, even when the Premier and several ministers visited Thunder Bay over the weekend. They're calling for an independent inquiry on the MNR's response time and what they say was a lack of communication and evacuation orders. Minister of Energy, Emergency Preparedness and Response, Jill Dunlop, refutes that, saying she and her staff have been talking with First Nations.
Have ya? The same way you were answering all those questions on CBC, I imagine.
Well, I can tell you that I personally have had 2 Zoom calls with Chief Fiddler, and we had a call last week where there was a couple of questions that came up that my ADM, who was acting deputy at the time, was able to follow up with the chief. And then we had a call again this morning and kind of went through a few more things. But my Provincial Emergency Operations Center has coordinated calls with all of the impacted communities. So there has been a lot of communication back and forth between First Nation communities, with myself and with my colleagues and our ministry officials as well.
Meanwhile, the Ministry of Natural Resources released a statement this morning saying, in part, "We are in constant contact with First Nations communities and have taken action to improve coordination this fall."
Were you in constant contact with them when you didn't warn them to evacuate? So a coalition of Northern Ontario First Nation chiefs is calling for a public inquiry into the province handling of wildfires that have devastated communities and forced thousands to flee with little notice. Just trying to see if there's... Leaders report a lack of communication and delayed evacuations. Yeah. It took too long to recognize the danger, too long to issue a clear direction, and too long to order evacuation. White Sands' preparedness and decision-making helped prevent an already dangerous situation from becoming worse. Chief Helen, whose community, Collins First Nation, also called Collins, was destroyed by fire, said members barely escaped with the clothes on their back. "My community was devastated by a forest fire that overtook homes with great speed and heat," she said. "My members barely escaped with the clothes on their back." She said her community was left to evacuate without notice and support on July 13th. The suggestion that the fire was started in the community is completely and utterly false, she said. Calls for leadership changes and inquiry. So, also, federal recognition for Collins community sought. Again, the federal government is not recognizing them as a First Nation, even though everyone living there is First Nations. I'll toss this into the sandbox. Yeah, so First Nations. So this is one of the other aspects of this that goes unsaid a lot of the times is what happens to the evacuees of communities. Where do they go? What kind of conditions are they going into? And so here, First Nation evacuees fleeing wildfires face safety risks in Toronto, leaders say. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. First Nation chiefs and community members are highlighting the risk that follow evacuees after they fleeing Northern Ontario wildfires, as they say those sheltering in Toronto hotels are facing elevated dangers linked to drugs and alcohol and human trafficking. Cat Lake First Nation Chief Russell Wesley says he was working with the province to evacuate more than 450 of his community members to Toronto last week, but already he wants to see them return home. Wellesley says the community north of Sioux Lookout, Ontario, was not given autonomy to pick where residents were evacuated to, and if he had the choice, he would have kept residents closer to home where they can maintain cultural practices such as fishing and hunting and minimize the disruption of their lives. In a Toronto hotel off Highway 401 where Cat Lake residents are sheltering, he said social costs of First Nations not having the power to manage their own evacuation has been laid bare. Cat Lake social worker Chantal Wesley says she has sleepless nights worrying if all the residents made it back to their rooms safely and security guards have already had run-ins with predators. 12 of the 13 community evacuated due to the nearly 180 wildfires raging in Ontario's North First Nations. The social worker said some community members drink as a way of coping with integrated impacts of residential school system. She says these were already issues for residents in the remote communities, but a danger has been exacerbated by the evacuation. A lot of these communities are dry because of this issue. So they don't have access to alcohol in their own communities. Suddenly they're thrown in Toronto and they're looking for ways to cope with, the trauma that they're going through, layered on top of the intergenerational trauma that they're already dealing with. It's not like they have resources to go out, get healthy food, to do something with their time even. They're just shuttered up in a hotel room. Whereas, if they were kept closer to their community, they could still participate with their cultural practices, have the support of the community, and not have so many people from outside trying to influence them. The same concerns have been echoed by members of this First Nation who moved to a Toronto hotel as wildfire smoke filled their homes and interrupted food and water deliveries to the flying community. Chief Gary says there was a security incident at the hotel involving a young mother who was approached by a person in a vehicle, raising his concerns about the potential risk of human trafficking. Joey Morningstar, manager with ISN, an Indigenous-led emergency management company providing wraparound services to the group during the evacuation, said safety issues related to alcohol and human trafficking are too common after First Nation communities evacuate. He said people have been lost to overdoses during previous evacuations because drugs and alcohol are more accessible in cities than in residents' communities. They don't have to be looking for it. It will find them in a lot of these cities. They will prey on vulnerable, Morningstar said. Riley Yesno, an Anishinaabe scholar and member of this First Nation, said those who have fled wildfires are climate refugees in their own homelands and push back on the idea that the evacuees must be perfect victims. She said First Nation evacuees face expectations to act a certain way and be grateful for whatever support they receive. Russell Wellesley, the Cat Lake First Nations chief, says he's planning to fly residents back home as soon as next week with help from the province, as wildfire risk near the community is now lower. Chantal Wesley, the social worker, said she wants to return despite the risk. You have to pick which one's more dangerous. Is it more dangerous for us to be in the Greater Toronto Area, or is it more dangerous for us to go home and be with the fire? She said, there's no right answer. Imagine trying to make that decision. Is it safer to be around raging wildfires or, the risks of being in Toronto and just the racism, the cultural racism that goes on with it, the way that people who deal with drugs and alcohol will prey on them, human traffickers, all that sort of stuff, the way that they are targeted as a vulnerable community. Okay, and one more, not about the article. The NDP can, say whatever they want, but this here I wanted to watch, support for displaced animals during wildfires, because again, animals are not necessarily considered in a lot of this. A lot of evacuation shelters don't allow animals. So if you have pets with you, what do you do? If you have livestock, horses, what do you do with them? Or just wildlife in general, what happens to them if you come across an injured animal because of the wildfire? So support for displaced animals during wildfires.
Are still burning in northern Ontario. It's forced hundreds to evacuate and has caused widespread destruction in communities. It's not only impacting humans, but pets too, many of which are in need of respite care right now. To talk more about that is Sam Kinnegeezer with Northern Reach Network. It's a busy time, but we appreciate you taking the time with us today, Sam.
Thanks for having me.
Describe what your rescue is seeing in relation to the impact these fires are having on pets and how your network is helping right now.
So right now we have two streams of help that we're offering to communities. We're having our regular stream, which is surrendered and stray animals. Those are ones that are fostered temporarily in Thunder Bay, and then they travel down to southern Ontario to ultimately be adopted. More specific to the wildfires, we are seeing an influx of community members who have been displaced, whether into Thunder Bay or down into the Niagara region, and they're in situations where they can't have their animals with them. So for those animals where the ultimate goal is for them to be reunited, we're offering respite care in the Thunder Bay area so that they don't have to face the journey down to southern Ontario and back when their family members are able to go home.
Now, Sam, you have given us some images of the animals that you've taken in. Many of them are from northern Ontario, many of them a little bit more local to the GTA, but it's not just dogs and cats. We're talking birds, chickens as well. What happens to them now?
So they're in foster care in Thunder Bay. We have had an amazing show of community support. We've processed over 500 applications. So we had 4 chickens come in the other night, and we immediately had someone who has a flock of chickens that they were able to welcome them. We had 3 budgies come in, and we put a call out, and we had an experienced budgie person. We were also fortunate to be able to have the birds seen by a vet experienced with avian.
In general, how are these animals doing? This would be a very traumatic experience for them.
They are so resilient. As you can see in the pictures, those cats, those videos and pictures were taken the day after they arrived.
That looks like Abernathy.
They're settling into their foster homes. They're getting out of the hotel rooms. What's usually happening is they come in and...
That is a beautiful dog.
The people are hopeful to stay together, and they realize that being in a hotel room for these animals that are used to a little more of a free roam lifestyle is just not for them. So they're happy to be in a home with exercise and stimulation and the enrichment that they need.
Now, Sam, the network was looking for fosters at one point. You had put out the call to help with the influx. Is that still the case? Are you still looking for fosters at this time, or is there another way people watching today can show their support?
We are always happy to welcome new fosters, because even if we have an entire list, sometimes we have a specific animal, like the birds, for example, come in where we don't have a big pool of people that can take that specific animal. So it never hurts.
I would foster some of the kitty cats if I could, but I'm way too south to help them out.
It's to fill out our form to get on our foster list, because we don't know what's coming next. If people can't foster, we need help with driving animals around. We have plenty of fosters who don't drive, so picking up an animal when they land at the airport and delivering it. There's a community vet program in Thunder Bay right now, and being able to transport animals, whether they're still with their families or in foster care. up to that so that they can get their vaccinations and their parasite prevention.
And
so there is a job for everyone.
And of course, these wildfires are still active, Sam. What do the next couple of days look like for you and your network?
Right now, we are working with 2 communities still where there are animals that have been left behind. One is a road access community. One, unfortunately, is fly-in only, which makes it more challenging to get the dogs and cats and other animals out. So we are still actively working. Every time we think we're on a little bit of a break, we get another email or another request to go get animals, and we jump on that to go help.
If people want to find out more information or support you guys, is there a website they can go to?
Yeah, our website is northernreachrescuenetwork.com. We're also very active on social media. You can pick your platform, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok.
Well, it is important.
Didn't mention Twitter.
Work that you guys are doing. Good luck, especially during this very busy time. Sam Kinnegeezer, Northern Reach.
Okay. So that is all wildfire news that I had for y'all today. That was a lot. A lot going on. I hope you found that interesting and informative. The world is literally on fire right now. It's scary, scary times. Let's see. Just checking in the SandBox. You like that the monitor's over there now, don't you? So it looks like I'm actually looking at the SandBox. Let's see what people are saying. Want to make sure that I haven't missed saying hi to anyone who goes in the SandBox, because I always appreciate when people go in the SandBox. You comment in there and stuff, it helps in the algorithms, and I could really use that boost. Because I judge people based on their music taste, fair warning. I don't know what that's in reference to. Assuming she has good taste in music, gotta meet Zed's grandma. Okay. I had to backtrack to figure out the context. Boku, 10 billion would solve American homelessness, and budget of 100 billion yearly would keep it solved. Way less than it takes to deal with it after the fact. Absolutely. And 9% of the Pentagon's yearly budget. Oh yeah, if we diverted the money that we spend on military and oil and AI, everything could be solved. Healthcare, housing, food, all of it, education, all of it could be solved. Universal basic income, like it's just, yeah, the money is there. The political will is not. Yes, the Wild West, I believe in housing first. Wasn't a question, I was agreeing with you. Also saying it's weird when government pretends to care about people when they let people die on the street. Yeah. Boku, sex when your job takes you away from your family. Did Sandy talk about Big Bear Bald Eagle? That's sick? I don't know what that is. Should I Google it, or is that kind of risque to Google? Oh. So thank you everyone for coming out on this Monday evening afternoon to talk about wildfires. Like I said, I hope you found it informative. Been working on the TYT essay, working on cataloging links. It's been a steady grind. Any help that people can provide right now, I really need it to pay off. I had to get the new table so that I can actually feel less stressed working, because I can do this right now, and I'm not worried about the table collapsing with all my equipment on it, which, it's amazing how much better I feel without that stress. But yeah, also other things, just only if you can. Only if you can. I do not want anyone sending me money if you need it. Let's see. Oh, it was attacked? Big bear, bald eagle, in critical condition after attack with other eagles. Yeah, I don't want to watch that. No, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch animal on animal violence or violence in general. Yeah, no. Let's see. But yeah, Wednesday, Minuet should be on this space. So you can check out them. My next live stream will probably be Sunday. But yeah, as I was saying, any help through PayPal or an e-transfer, but only if you can. Only if you can. The links are in the description box. And yeah, if during a live stream I get $1 bazillion and I have the interest, energy at the end, I have some very good, interesting sneak peeks I can show you of the TYT essay that I've been working on. I came across something because apparently I have more journalistic integrity than Cenk and Anna combined. Just like there's something Cenk has said over and over that people just hear, but we don't really. You have to think critically, and the instant you think about it, something feels off. And then when you look into it, you learn it's really, really off. And Cenk is just spewing a whole bunch of bullshit and using it to justify a ban on women in trans women in sports. Like, just absolutely grotesque that he has participated in this the way he has. But yeah, interesting tidbit of information I came across, let's put it that way. So yeah, let's see if there is anything else to say. I'm hungry, so I'm probably just, going to keep it at a short live stream of 3 hours. But let me do the thing. The thing that I do is this. Thing is that I'm not done working yet, because the links relevant to my cataloging, I'm going to have to copy and paste and stuff. So I'm still going to be here working after I sign off. Because, yeah, let's just say my financial situation is really, really strong motivator for me to keep stressed out enough that I just keep working, because if I don't and my brain settles a little bit, I start freaking the fuck out. Yeah, it's really, yeah. But first, let me see if there's anyone live that I am familiar with that we can go and raid, because I like to support other content creators. Oh, looks like Pep Talks is live. And so be it. So we'll be raiding over to Pep Talks after this. Contributor to this space. So check out his channel, like, subscribe, all that sort of jazz. Like and subscribe to mine, share my content. If anyone could help me get onto a larger platform to help boost my channel, I could really, really use that support right now. Like, really, really, really use that support right now. So please, if you know anyone that might be interested in having me on, it is what it'd be helpful. Boku no Pep Talks, please. You don't have to participate in the raid. So I think with all of that, I'm going to sign off. So, thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you, mods. Mod. I should say. Thank you, Looney Tunes. Thank you, everyone who has, helped out financially. I really appreciate it. Members of the SandBox and Patreon, super, super helpful. And anyone who just likes, subscribes, shares my content, I'm very grateful for your support. With all of that, salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.